I'm David Weston. Join me each week on Wall Street Week for stories of capitalism from business, markets, economics, tech, and we go on the road for a look at what lies behind the headlines of today and what will likely be the headlines tomorrow.
We need more transparency.
Oil and gas is still important.
They said every citizen should be investing in the market.
Accelerate progress in all fields of science.
Watch Wall Street Week right here on Bloomberg. More than what you need to know, it's what you need to think about.
You up to the minute news whenever and wherever it happens. I'm Hassan Amin in Bangkok. This is Bloomberg.
What is going to be the consequence for U.S. markets?
We're obviously deep in the European earnings season. Take a look at how we're faring when it comes to Asian markets.
The Middle East.
Hello, this is DrPaulCottrell, and I'm doing this live stream on October 28th. I will also release this on the multiple channels that I have. I have YouTube, Brighteon, Bitchute, and Rumble. All the links are in the description of this video. Please click the links and subscribe to all my channels. In addition, you can follow me on TikTok, Substack, Patreon. You can also follow me on X and GETTR. So please help support the work that I do. All these videos are for free. Ask your social media to follow me and subscribe. If you like the free content that I provided, all this content is for free. I have thousands of videos for free giving you my perspective on the news and what's going on in the markets and how to navigate them and how to improve your health and wellness. Please help support by donating. You can donate through Stripe, PayPal, or buy me a coffee on my website, the-studio-reykjavik.com. You can be a paid member to my Substack and Patreon channel. Those are great ways to help support the work. And better yet, get the great products that I offer. I have ebooks, I have course material on immunology and pulmonology, and you can also purchase the very high quality supplements to slow down the aging process and to boost up your immune system. If you follow my advice, and this is what I do to slow down the aging process, if you follow my advice, you're gonna get healthy. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. So let's just plug a couple products before we go to covering the news. There's a lot to cover today, especially what happened in Japan last night. Please go to my store and get the cleanse. This is 30 parts per million or the max 35, which is 35 parts per million. You take it the same way. Take a teaspoon of this or the cleanse, swish it in your mouth, gargle about 20 seconds, and then swallow it. What that will do is help to improve your oral cavity and your oral pharynx, help to maintain the mucosal barrier, and to help to improve the health and viability of the epithelial cells in your oral pharynx. When you do that, you're boosting up your immune system. So please go to my store and get the Max 35 or the cleanse. Take it every day. I've been doing this protocol for over 5 years, every day. If you're not feeling well or someone around you is not feeling well, take a tablespoon or two a day. Once everything's all clear, then go back to your maintenance dose. But do this every day. Please go to my store and get the cleanse and the Max 35. All right, let's listen into Bloomberg before we cover some of the other news.
Speculative interest has probably come out of that, and there's been some profit taking. Anything that's up north of 60% year to date, there's certainly right for profit taking. But what I do think is important is the sense that this has come off because maybe some of the risks have dissipated. And the risks, I think, are more macro than the risks around goals, such as the fiscal, the debt, etc. So not something that has really gone away at this point.
All right, Ethan, we'll have more coming up after the market open. That's Moneta Chief Global Market Strategist, Ethan Devitt.
The market hasn't opened yet. It'll open up in about 3 minutes. The futures are at about 6,925 the last I looked. So the S&P 500 year-end target I still have at 6,800 to 7,000. Now, I'm gonna probably up that target a little bit and say that the low bound of that will be about 6,850 to 7,000 range. But the point here is I'm concerned as we go into December that Trump states something that may be market negative dealing with tariffs. So we have to be vigilant. But the probability of it being in between 6,800 and 7,000 is very high for the end of the year. Now, if you've been listening to me, when there was the major sell-off in April, where the market went down to about 4,830, and you started putting in money, you made quite a bit of profit. So this is the reason why you need to listen to me. All right. So S&P 500 is on a tear, and it's most likely going to be at an all-time high at the end of the year. Now the question is with that market structure, that price structure, and what's going on internationally, economically, and geopolitically, we need to reevaluate to see what will happen in Q1, Q2, Q3 of next year. All right. But most of the investment houses are not going to want to close out the year in the negative. So the chances of a major sell-off by the end of the year is becoming very small, exponentially smaller by the day. So it behooves them to close out the year really well, so they'll have marketing materials for next year to try to get new clients. So this is the game that's being played right now. But we have to be very careful because Trump could say something about tariffs and you could have a 1,000 point sell-off in the Dow. You could easily have 100, 150 point sell-off in the S&P 500. So we have to be vigilant on this. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the great structural nano silver soaps that I have. You can get it in lemongrass, charcoal tea tree. You can also get it in peppermint and in lavender. Get a couple bars for your household, very high quality. It's made from structural nano silver. These are the bars that I use every day, and help with your health and wellness. In addition, this is great to have for gifts, for the holidays, and also to navigate your family through the fall and the winter season. So please go to my store and get the great structural nano silver soaps. And again, that max 35 and that cleanse is perfect for dealing with the fall and the winter season. So please go to my store, be prepared, and you will be able to weather the fall and the winter season much better if you're not prepared. So please go to my store and get these very high quality structural nano silver soaps. Okay, the market's opening up.
To date, it's down 14%. So it hasn't been really fantastic if you own the stock, but I guess still an incredible milestone.
Yes, very well put, Matt. I love it.
If you bought stock in 1929, by the way.
I'm probably doing
Okay, all right. So we have the S&P 500 is at 6,895. Okay, so it's 6,895. Futures are pointing at 6,925. You got to remember the futures market is always a little bit higher than what the cash market is. So throughout this week, most likely we're going to be testing that 6,900 mark. So in the immediate term resistance level, it's 6,900. And you have a very good support level at 8,750. So that's the trading range right now. Most likely it's going to break the 6,900 and wobble around there for a little while, but that's what's happening right now. All right, with that, let's go to some of the news. Trump approves batch of missiles for Japan's F-35 jets. Now, last night, Trump was in Japan and they signed an agreement. A big part of that agreement is dealing with rare earth metals. And it looks like there's some sort of defense accord that's starting to develop. This is important because Trump is starting to deal with the peripheral countries around China and putting geopolitical pressure on North Korea and China with these agreements with these different countries and creating an alliance, an economic alliance, and also in some cases a military alliance. This is very important because what this does is it allows Trump to have more negotiating leverage against President Xi. All right, let's listen into Fox. What would you spend $100,000?
No matter what challenge comes our way, no matter what danger we face, we hoist our great American flag very, very high. We race into the waves and we rally to that immortal battle cry of the American sailor. Damn the torpedoes. God bless Japan. God bless the United States of America. And God bless our Navy. Thank you, everybody. Thank you.
President Trump just moments ago speaking to service members at the Yokosuka Naval Base, celebrating our military and his wins for the American people during his trip to Asia.
The president now expected to head to a reception with business leaders later this morning to wrap up his time in Japan before he heads to South Korea for that crucial face-to-face with Xi Jinping. You're watching Fox and Friends. First here on a Tuesday morning, I'm Todd Pilot.
And I'm Carly Shimkus. Doug Levator has all the breaking news overnight from President Trump's remarks. And
alongside Japan's new prime minister. Both force and friendship on board the U.S. aircraft carrier George Washington this morning, appearing at one point alongside Japan's new prime minister.
Woman. That's right. This woman is a winner. So, you know, we've become very close friends all of a sudden because their stock market today and our stock market today hit an all-time high. That means we're doing something right. But the cherished alliance between the United States and Japan is one of the most remarkable relationships in the entire world.
The president at one point brought up Naval Air Crewman Third Class James Bacall onto the stage. During those remarks, Bacall helped find and rescue 3 missing Navy divers off the Japanese coast 2 years ago. Trump also honoring all of the service members there.
We do make the best weapons, but if you don't have the right people to operate those weapons, they don't mean much. Despite that, as Commander-in-Chief, I never forget that our ultimate strength does not come from equipment. It comes from the men and women of the rank and file. That's true. It comes from you people, incredible people.
Incredible people. And there you see a live picture from Tokyo, where we expect Marine One to land shortly. Along the way in this trip, there was talk of Japan buying a new fleet of Ford F-150 pickup trucks, as well as new defense business for the U.S.
I'm delighted to report that I've just approved the first batch of missiles. You saw a couple of them coming down with me. I hugged them. We need them. They're the best in the world. Nobody has them like we have them. They all want our missiles. That's the problem. Everybody wants them. But it's the first batch of missiles to be delivered to the Japanese self-defense forces for Japan's F-35s. And they're coming this week, so they're ahead of schedules.
And from Japan, the president will travel to South Korea, where he is expected to meet with Chinese President Xi Jinping. A lot hinges, of course, on that meeting as far as trade talks are concerned. But the president also says he is open to sitting down with North Korean leader Kim Jong-un. There's no guarantee that's going to happen, but what a thing that would be. Todd and Carl.
Doug Levator live for us this morning on the right-hand side of your screen, while on the left-hand side of your screen, Marine One either has landed or is about to land. It's a little bit tough to see because, again, it is night over there. Let's bring in Gatestone Institute senior fellow Gordon Chang. Gordon, obviously, we just played a number of clips from Donald Trump's speech to our Navy. That was very exciting. It was very motivational. It was very, I would dare to say, somewhat threatening to China. If I heard that and I'm Xi Jinping, I'm thinking to myself, wow, we have a military that is ready to go. We are on our game, and that could be a force if, China decides to get a little bit creative with Taiwan. Does President Trump now have the upper hand going into Thursday's meeting with Xi Jinping in light of the trade deals, in light of that speech we just saw in front of the Navy?
The United States has much more leverage over China than China has over us. And yes, a lot of Americans have talked about rare earth dependency and pharmaceutical dependency, but China needs the American market. It has never been more trade dependent in its history. And this deal that we have been told about, a framework, is essentially a 1-year truce, maybe a little bit less, maybe a little bit more. But the point is, we are using that time much better than China. Matter of fact, China is doubling down on industrial policy that makes it more dependent on exports, which means more dependent on the US. So this is going to be a very good year for America.
Yeah, we're watching Marine One as it's about to land in Tokyo. Next on the president's agenda today is he's going to attend a reception with business leaders. That's supposed to happen at 6 o'clock this morning, our time. And then after he is finished with his trip to Japan, he gets to South Korea, Gordon. And there the country is expected to lean into the fact that they plan to help President Trump in the United States with its mission of building more ships and building up our Navy. How important is that given the size of China's Navy?
Well, the US Navy has a management problem, and it's had it for about
Let me just interject here. The S&P 500 is at 6,886. Again, the resistance level short term is 6,900. The 10-year yield is below 4% for the bond market. So that's very positive in the sense of the negative correlation between bonds and equities. Also, we think that the Federal Reserve is going to be lowering rates this month, maybe a 1/4 point. I don't think it'll be a 1/2 point, but if it is a 1/2 point, then that'll be even a further acceleration on equities. But I think that there's a high probability of a 1/4 point reduction by the Federal Reserve. So that's also helping to bring down the yield curve.
decade or more. And yes, we do need help. The thing that is important here is that we're building business relationships with South Korea at a time that its government is very pro-China, very pro-North Korea, and virulently anti-US. Now, the people of South Korea are pro-US, but this government is not. And so these business ties that the United States is establishing are really important to bind South Korea to us. So yes, this is a very good thing, Carly.
So, Gordon, how do you expect China to respond to President Trump's deals on this trip so far?
I expect them to do what they do in the past, and that is to promise us everything and then renege on their promises. Right. The important point here is that the U.S. Has given a very substantial concession to China, a concrete one, not imposing the additional 100% tariffs. We've done that for promises from China on rare earths, fentanyl, soybeans. I hope that they honor it this time, but we got to be extremely concerned. And you got to remember that the Phase 1 trade deal of January 2020, the Chinese did exactly that. They told us what we wanted to hear, and then they decided they were not going to honor their promises. And that was during an election year, which had, I think, an impact on the outcome of the 2020 presidential election.
Yeah, just taking a step back for a moment, Gordon. From a 30,000-foot view, what have your top takeaways been on this trip so far with the president in Asia? And also, has anything surprised you?
Well, Sunday was fantastic for the United States with all of those trade deals and with the enhanced ceasefire agreement. It shows that even in China's neighborhood, it's the U.S. that is the dominant force, not Beijing. And so that was really good. I loved the president's dance moves on his arrival in Malaysia.
Right.
We would never exceed Xi Jinping do something like that. And that's the reason why people in Asia, regardless of what they think about American policies or Trump policies, They love the president of the United States. And that's also true of people in China itself. From what little we know, Trump is very popular on the streets of China, much more popular than their own leader.
Yeah, just a few other notes before I let you go. The Japanese Prime Minister also said to President Trump that she pledged to give Washington 250 cherry trees for our 250th anniversary next year, and also give President Trump a putter used by Shinzo Abe because they formed a really solid and wonderful friendship over their shared love of golf. So two other little fun notes from this trip, along with the dancing in Malaysia. GETTR Institute Senior Fellow Burton Chang, thank you so much for joining.
One even more box.
All right, we're going to go to a video from NHK talking about the summit that took place between the new Prime Minister of Japan and Trump last night. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the C60. You can get it in avocado, extra virgin olive oil, and also MCT coconut oil. You can get it in a 2 ounce, a 4 ounce, or an 8 ounce configuration. Take a teaspoon a day, every day, preferably on an empty stomach. C60 is 1,000 times more potent than vitamin C. This is part of my protocol to slow down the aging process. And by taking C60 every day, teaspoon a day, what will happen is you're going to soak up free radicals, and by doing that, you're improving your different organ systems. You're improving your immune system and your endocrine system. You're improving your brain function. You're improving your cardiovascular. Why? By soaking up free radicals at the vascular level, you're reducing the concentrations of oxidized LDL. And when you do that, you're reducing plaque formation. Super important to take. C60 is a cornerstone to slow down the aging process. Now, for your neurons, by soaking up those free radicals, you're reducing stress on the neuron, so the neuron's healthier. But not just that, your mitochondria in the neuron are healthier, and therefore there's producing more energy. And therefore you'll be able to produce more neurotransmitters, and the neuroplasticity will improve for your brain. You'll be thinking faster, and your memory will improve. Now, at other cellular levels and tissue levels, by soaking up free radicals in those cells and around those cells in the extracellular matrix, you're reducing the stress of the tissue. And when you're doing that, the organ systems will perform better. The tissues will perform better. You'll have more energy in the cells, and the cells will perform better. So please go to my store, get the C60, either in MCT coconut oil, avocado oil, or extra virgin olive oil. Take a teaspoon a day, every day. In addition, take this during the fall and the winter, because when you contract something, you're producing lots of free radicals. You want to soak those up. You ever notice that when someone's sick all the time that they age faster? I just told you why. Because they produce more free radicals. You want to soak those up and slow down the aging process and boost up that immune system. Please go to my store and get the C60. C60 will also help the basal layer of your skin, improve the stem cells at the basal layer, so your skin will improve. You will notice within 1 year, before and after, if you compare yourself, you'll notice that you look younger within 1 year. In 2 months, you'll start feeling the effects of improving your organ systems. So please go to my store and get the C60 and stack it with resveratrol, NAD+, ubiquinol, clarity factor. Those are all great ways to slow down the aging process. In addition, if you follow my protocol, by taking a probiotic, a multivitamin, taking the Max 35 or cleanse, taking C60, taking the turmeric, ashwagandha, and lignans, and the Boomer Boost, that is a powerful stack to slow down the aging process. You do that every day, and you do this resistance training and some cardio stretching, balancing, eating properly, drinking filtered water, getting proper sleep, mindfulness or spirituality, learning new things, and that is a recipe to slowing down the aging process. It's that simple. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the great supplements I have, and use discount 5. All caps, discount 5. All right, now let's go to the NHK perspective on this.
Also supporting it across. No matter what challenge comes our way, no matter what danger we face, we hoist our flag.
There it is.
For more on how it went, I'm joined now by Sugiyama Shinsuke. He's a former Japanese ambassador to the United States and served during Trump's first term. Thank you very much for coming.
Good to be with you this afternoon.
Thank you. Well, Trump and Takaichi have met. They did not release a joint statement today, and they did not hold a joint news conference. But does this say anything?
That surprised that did surprise. I watched it last night. I was surprised there was no joint statement and no questioning from the reporters. That surprised me. Why? I don't know. I'm not sure if that was planned or they were running out of time, or I'm not sure.
Not a big deal because for today, I think the schedule is very tight, including this shown meeting with the families. So, and on top of that, I think they spoke very well in front of the camera in the Akasaka Palace at the first couple of minutes or more than a couple of minutes or something. So I don't think that's not a big deal.
That was quite a long conversation
Yes.
they had at the beginning of the talks and with the media present. But you know, as I mentioned, you were the ambassador to the United States during the first Trump presidency, and you had a front row seat to the president's relationship with former Prime Minister Abe. So what approach do you think Takaichi should take if she wants to keep this relationship on a good term?
Yeah, first of all, one thing which I can tell you for sure is that former Prime Minister Abe Shinzo had a very, very excellent personal relationship with this US President Donald Trump. So there are a couple of reasons why he was able to do that, but I think he was so frank and sociable and friendly, but he was the one who spoke up very much in a very articulate way. So I think as long as current first female leader, Prime Minister Takaichi, is able to speak up by herself, be herself, and then be very much precisely trying to say what she would like to say, I think that's something that POTUS would love to listen to.
You suggest then that Takaichi be very articulate,
Yes.
be direct with what she wants to say.
That's right. And then, of course, on top of that, Prime Minister Takaichi was a former Home Minister or something at the time of the former Prime Minister Shinzo Abe formed the cabinet. So everybody knows that she has been rather close to the former Prime Minister Shinzo Abe.
She will benefit from that relationship. Let's go into some of the things they tackled during this summit. Japan has been working to boost its defense spending, and Takaichi is saying that she plans to speed it up. Trump seems pleased with these moves. He appreciates Tokyo buying American equipment. How important is defense spending for this relationship?
Well, I do believe that it is very important. I wouldn't say every one of us in this country will agree to necessity to expand the defense spending, but maybe there are consensus among us all under this current very severe security situation in East Asia. So Japan, as a sovereign country, must make further effort to expand defense spending. But at the same time, US, the only single ally to Japan, the Security Pact Article 5 does stipulate that if Japan is being attacked, we must just have a joint actions against the invasion. So I think it is quite appropriate for the two leaders as an allies to talk about these things, including how we are supposed to expand the defense spending.
And they also signed trade documents based on the recent tariff negotiations, and that has been going back and forth. This does include a $550 billion investment from Japan into the United States. We don't know the details of this, but do you think the issue of trade is being settled now between the
Well, nothing is being settled until the final end, but to say the least, on this particular issue, the document has been already signed, joint statement has been already made clear. So all we have to do is to implement what we have agreed in that signed document. But at the same time, how to implement what we agreed is something that we are to work further. And that's what Prime Minister Takaichi and the US President, and then other cabinet members and government people are supposed to do further.
So they're carefully still continuing their negotiations. Trump also took time, as you mentioned, to meet with the families of abductees, the who were Japanese citizens abducted in North Korea. Why was this an important meeting?
Because this issue has been long-standing issues for years, more than decades. And prime ministers and all the government leaders have been saying that this is one of the most important scientific matters for the Japanese government. So this is something to relate to Japanese sovereignty. So, and then of course the safety and the good well-being of the Japanese citizens. And then we have been, done by North Korea's very much badly for years. So I think this is, as I said, one of the most important issues. And I think the POTUS is one of those leaders who do understand the importance of solving this issue.
Well, we should also look out for Trump's meeting with Chinese President Xi Jinping, which is to be happening on Thursday. And the fact that the Prime Minister of Japan has now met Trump here in Japan, and they are sending messages, I think, towards this meeting as well. Do you think they are succeeding in sending out the message they want to?
Oh, I do believe so. I mean, momentarily, they just fly by helicopter to Yokosuka base jointly. But that's one of the signs to show to the rest of the international community, including East Asia. But I think the biggest point for current POTUS in his mind is how to deal with Chinese. So is the leader for Japan. Well, certainly are different ways because there are some differences, historical and geopolitical and something, but there are some sort of common basis for us to talk about how to deal with Chinese to get into the international community in a rule-based manner.
So showing that this current relationship between Japan and the United States is very strong.
Yes.
Does this benefit both sides as they go and meet?
I think so. I mean, of course, the pressure as well as dialogue both are necessary, but we must show some of their strength and power to let them be engaged further, to come to with us to talk further.
Thank you very much for your insight, former Japanese ambassador to the United States, Sugiyama Shinsuke.
Nice to be with.
Build a website you love with Wix. For your words, create your brand.
All right, so we're gonna go over the BBC and their take on this summit that took place between, or agreement that took place between Japan and the United States. But before we do that, please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the great supplements that I offer that help to detoxify your body. I have many different ways to detoxify your body. One great way is to take the zeolite. Zeolite, you take 3 small drops underneath your tongue and drink filtered water. It's that easy. You can do that every day. And what it does is it'll bind to heavy metals, toxins, and chemicals and allow you to urinate them out within 6 to 8 hours. Super important to detoxify your body, because when you detoxify your body, your organ systems will improve. Your kidney function, your liver, your spleen, your immune system, your endocrine system, your brain. So go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. The link is in the description of this video, and get the zeolite. Take it every day, 3 small drops, and drink the filtered water. And stay away from processed foods, because a lot of processed foods has chemicals in it that disrupt your endocrine system and your immune system. So take this every day, go to my store and get the zeolite. Get healthy. All right, let's listen into the BBC.
Has been meeting Japan's Prime Minister Sanae Takaichi for talks on trade and security. The pair have already signed a framework deal on the supply of critical minerals and rare earth minerals. And in his opening remarks, President Trump had high praise for Japan's new leader. He said ties with Tokyo are stronger than ever as he touted a potential arms deal between the two. President Trump then delivered a speech to American sailors on the USS George Washington, an aircraft carrier currently docked in Japan. He was accompanied by Prime Minister Takaichi.
This woman is a winner. So, we've become very close friends all of a sudden because their stock market today and our stock market today hit an all-time high. That means we're doing something great. But the cherished alliance between the United States and Japan is one of the most remarkable relationships in the entire world. Really, there's never been anything like it. Born out of the ashes of a terrible war. Our bond has grown over 8 decades into the beautiful friendship that we have. It's a foundation of peace and security in the Pacific. You see it?
Well, let's speak to our correspondent in Tokyo, Shaima Khalil. So, Shaima, a good first meeting between the new Prime Minister Takaichi and President Trump. What's your assessment of the overall relationship between the two and how this meeting has taken it into whatever direction?
You know, Regina, I think Sanai Takaichi went into this meeting as a big test, her big diplomatic debut after she made history as Japan's first female prime minister last week. And there was a lot to worry about because this is a big test to host in your first week in power. But I think that so far, and we're coming towards the end of the day, it has really gone very well for the prime minister. He was full of praise for her. He called her a winner. I think they've served some iconic pictures there in their first meeting earlier in the day, but also on board the USS GW George Washington amid the US Navy. It's a message of strength. It's a message of solidified friendship and alliance, and a message that those two partners on the trade front and crucially on the defense and the military front are stronger than ever. And remember, these two share a common friend, which is the late Prime Minister Shinzo Abe. And, you know, even though he's no longer with us, he was killed more than 3 years ago. It felt to me like he was very much present in spirit today, Rajini. And this is not just an ice-breaking exercise. I think the fact that these two leaders shared a close relationship with Shinzo Abe meant that there was a lot of ground that was already covered on the first meeting. They had a lot in common. I think when it comes to Donald Trump pushing for more military spending from Japan, he's pushing an open door. But I think despite the pleasantries and a very positive day so far for the Prime Minister, Sanai Takaichi, there's going to be some tough decisions for her to make when Donald Trump pushes on trade, especially more access for the United States in Japanese markets, in the car market, in the agriculture market. This is going to be tricky for her. So she has to strike that balance between managing her country's alliance with the United States and managing her country's domestic interests.
Okay, Shaima Khalil in Tokyo, thank you very much for the moment. Well, let's stay with that story by speaking to Asuka Kuwabara, politics and economics analyst, who is also in Tokyo. Welcome to BBC News. Well, President Trump has hailed what he's described a golden age between the US and Japan. How would you define that golden age right now, then?
Arma mentioned that the beginning of the discussions between Trump and Takaichi has been anything but successful. They were praising each other, commenting all the positive things, including the ties with Mr. Abe Shinzo, who was close friends of Donald Trump, as well as successor of Ms. Takaichi. So I believe that this created the fundamental of the strong relationship between the US and Japan. And we will see how that goes along the line, especially when it comes to the trade deals.
Yeah, let's talk about the trade deal in a second, but let's talk about this rare earths deal that they signed. How significant is this in your estimation?
I believe that both Mr. Takaichi and Trump have shared view on China. They both want to show a strong stance against China, and agreeing on the rare earth deal with between Japan and US definitely helps them to strengthen its relationship. And of course, it's a tricky situation where China will get involved, and it will definitely include other players in the market. But this is a very significant deal that Japan has backup from the US, as well as the US making sure that they have an ally in the region, Asia Pacific, so that they can play a more stronger stance against China, which I believe that is shared between Ms. Takaichi and Trump.
And just very briefly, tariffs is another bugbear, isn't it, for most countries when it comes to dealing with the US? I know America wants better access to Japan's car market, for example. Where are things at the moment when it comes to the two on tariffs?
And unfortunately, the Japan yen has been quite weak, which weakened the presence of the Japanese car makers. And that is why the deal with the US, with Donald Trump pushing for the purchase of the American cars by Japan has been quite controversial. But at the same time, with the strong sentiment of the economy pushing the Nikkei to average to be more than 50,000 yen for the first time in the history, it has a good indication to the Japanese companies overall. And it definitely will play a significant role when it comes to the actual implementation of the trade related to the auto manufacturing.
Okay. Asuka Kawabara, thank you very much for sharing your thoughts and analysis as President Trump continues to visit Japan.
We're going to go to Fox Business talking about Mamdani. Now, Mamdani looks like he potentially could win the mayoral race in New York, and then eventually all of America is going to turn Marxist. Let's continue.
Alexandra Macedo is a California Assemblywoman. Siaka Massaquoi, Fox News contributor. Thanks to both of you. Alexandra, start with you. This started to sound like California. New York City started to sound like California. One of my things here, this is a great line. We didn't have the clip, but Mamdani was lamenting the fact, this is at his rally yesterday, sort of getting very emotional, that his aunt couldn't afford, was fearful about being in the New York subways after 9/11, wouldn't wear her hijab, and was worried about, being.
Russia says it has success.
The whole thing was a lie. His aunt was living in Tanzania, never was in New York City in the first place. I mean, that's the kind of nonsense that he's pulling out as this thing goes down to the wire. What do you make of this story?
What I make of it is I don't understand politicians that don't think they're going to be fact checked at some point. And how dare you lie about something when in the not so distant past we had a woman murdered on public transit because our public safety needs some checking, which is exactly what's happening. And then Mamdani's now calling on defunding the police and calling them names and criticizing them. How dare he? And what this shows is he has no platform. It's living in a fantasy world and lying to voters just to win. There's not a plan once he wins except to tax, and spend, but tell everybody it is free. The same thing is happening out in California, saying we're going to give you everything you want for free, so vote for us. Not understanding somebody has to foot the bill somewhere. Quit lying, give facts, and let the voters decide.
Siaka, somebody was doing some numbers, putting the pencil to paper. Just for the free childcare services, which would cost about $6 billion. That is nearly the budget of the entire New York Police Department, which kind of
Now think about that. Why do they want the child care? Think it's for the citizens of New York, the ones that are here legally? Most of them don't even have kids. No, it's for the illegals because they bring their kids with them.
Priority, does it not?
Yes, it does. Actually, to the point that he said before that the police is the problem and he wants to pay for the child care. Imagine this. You remove the police, which they want when you talk about Marxists, and now your kid, and it's so crazy to watch people applaud for the government to raise their kid earlier and earlier. And once they're able to get into those New York schools that are about 90+% liberal leaning, if not just liberal, far left itself, now you're training those kids to become worker bees and actually away from the American dream, which is to own your own lifestyle and own your own business. And these people want.
It's a good point that he's making. You have the plebs, the proletariat, and you have the bourgeoisie. Now, they want children coming out of these schools, going to universities, and coming out as Marxist, and they just want to pull down the bourgeoisie. They want to destroy entrepreneurship. They want to control the manufacturing. They want to control the means of manufacturing, the means of production. They want to take away your property rights. But Plato warned us of this long time ago in the Republic, and said, beware of the plebs. Beware of them rising up and not having some sort of ethics or virtue that would make the city state, in those times everything was run by a city state, the city state to be effective. So we are actually not paying attention to the warning signs of Plato. And we're going right down the tyrannical hellhole of Marxism. They want to get rid of the bourgeoisie. They want to get rid of you being able to create a business and grow it and hire people. Mondani wants the government, the nanny state, to come in and take it from you. There is such a thing as a bourgeoisie virtue. That's what America's all about. The foundation, the theoretical foundation of the Constitution is based on the Enlightenment. And what was some of the philosophy that was coming out of the Enlightenment? John Locke. Life, liberty, and property. You have these the essence of a society to be productive is by giving its citizens, through inalienable rights endowed by our Creator, not by man, life, liberty, and property. Now, Benjamin Franklin, really smart dude. He had an honorary doctorate. So it's really Dr. Benjamin Franklin. But Dr. Benjamin Franklin said this. You know what, Jefferson? Let's not talk about property. Let's take it even one step further. Pursuit of happiness. Elevate it even farther. So it's life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That's what our founding fathers created. And they built off of what John Locke wrote during the Enlightenment. This idea that our rights of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, and property ownership as being a subset of that, is given by God, not man. So why the hell are we allowing Marxism to come to New York through some bullshit guy that doesn't have any fucking experience, taking away our property rights and the bourgeoisie virtue? Let's continue.
That's what he's trying to set up with this childcare scam.
And he's attacking, I mean, they're really spending a lot of time attacking billionaires. You know, he singled out a couple, my friend Ken Langone, for example, being one of them. I mean, that's really just, that's kind of the socialist, you know, socialist. That's great. Soviet supermarkets attacking billionaires, free everything.
And this is the problem with Marxism. It's not part of the Enlightenment. It's actually a postmodern thing. It's dark and dreary. It's all about relativism. There's not some sort of elevated virtue that some of these more classical philosophers were pontificating about. So everyone's so focused on this Marxism and capitalism thing, but it goes deeper. It goes way deeper. Marxism is basically saying that it's okay for a democracy, the mob rule, to take away property. Yet our founding fathers said, well, wait a minute, we want to take the lessons learned from Plato and the Republic and say that we need to have a constitutional republic so property rights are protected, even if the majority of the masses want to take it away. because Socrates was warning everybody, beware of the plebs. Because in the mass, they're not that smart. Beware. And that's exactly what we're starting to see in New York. And if you want to use like a comparison between what was going on in Greece with the city-states and let's say London and New York or Madrid, these cities are such economic engines that they act as if they are a city-state. So Marx is saying we should be able to control the means of production. Why? Because the bourgeoisie is making too much money. But yet, if you look at the long trajectory, the life expectancy, the number of goods and services that the middle class has is far more now than it was 100 years ago. People live in middle class, not middle upper class, middle class lifestyles and have food security that they didn't have 200 years ago. You're living like a king. Some kings lived a little more opulent than others, but the point here is that through 250 years of development, life expectancy and security, physical security, is far better than it ever has been. So what's Marx's beef? What's Marx really complaining about? Okay, other people are making more money than the plebs. So it's about relativism. See, I said it's much deeper. It's relativism. And to justify taking it away, those rights that John Locke is talking about, life, liberty, and property, and what our founding fathers expounded on with life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, no. Marx is saying those rights are not given by God. They're given by man. And if they're given by man, we can take them away. And that's exactly what our founding fathers were worried about. And that's why they said these are inalienable rights. So anyone that's promoting Marxism, you're anti-Constitution. You're anti-Enlightenment. Oh, those smart people coming out of Harvard, those fucking Marxists, they know better. Really? Really? Do they? Do they really know better? Because they sure as hell didn't take the lessons learned from Plato, John Locke, or our founding fathers that wrote extensively in the Federalist Papers. Now again, Dr. Paul Cottrell, not wrong.
Alexandra, I mean, you think New Yorkers are going to do that? I know Californians are sympathetic to that. I always thought New Yorkers were a hardier lot.
Well, keep in mind that 1% of the population in New York actually pays 42, I believe, percent of their general fund. So when these people have to leave because they can't afford to live in or do business in New York, what is their plan to fund all of their free services? The same thing is happening out in California, and we have a $20 billion deficit. We're depleting our rainy day savings. We have no sustainability plan, but we continue to fund things that we cannot afford. They are privilege projects. They are not fundamental needs. And instead, Democrats want to play fast and loose with how they're going to fund things. And yeah, hate the billionaires. Hate to break it to you, but the billionaires are the reason why we have jobs in a free enterprise economy that has worked for decades. And they're trying to just and make us a socialist country.
I know, that's right. People with success. Siaka, just change subject for 1 minute. Mr. Trump's one big, beautiful ballroom in Washington, D.C. Did you know, Siaka, he offered years ago, he offered Obama, he would build one himself. He would finance the whole thing. I mean, And now the Democratic Party is obsessing about this. In fact, one dumb Democrat said that they're going to have to run on tearing down the Trump ballroom in the next presidential election. What do you think about that? What's wrong with it? You think the public would rather see a beautiful ballroom or tear down a beautiful ballroom?
Well, I think they would rather see a beautiful big ballroom, and I hope that I get to go there one day. But what we have to understand is what was mentioned earlier is they have nothing to run on except for free stuff and but Trump. And so right now we're seeing, well, what can they talk about now? Well, but Trump's doing a project that's costing $250 million, and then the news, the other mainstream media outlets forget to tell you that that 250 is coming from private companies, including Apple and Google and even Amazon. Now, let me ask you this: are any of those leftists going to just cancel those or throw away their Apple phone, their iPhones? Probably not, because it's not real. They just need to keep the emotion up, but it can only last for so long. And unfortunately, I do think Mamdani is going to win New York, and the people are going to have to live in it. And, you know, now we're going to have to figure out how it really goes, as opposed to just this
that's good.
champagne socialism that they're.
Well, we'll get a little primer on Soviet supermarkets that work so well. We'll get Soviet supermarkets. That's just what the public wants. Alexandra Macedo, thank you. Siaka Mesakwa, appreciate it very, very much.
Everything about Mint Mobile seems.
All right, we're going to go about this nuclear-powered missile system that's being developed by Russia. But before we do that, please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and support this enterprise called capitalism. Gladiator barley will bring down inflammation, soak up free radicals, detoxify your body, and help you to build muscle. Do resistance training. This is a month supply. This is a high-density protein. This is way better than anything you're going to get at GNC or some other health food store. All right. There's micronutrients in here. You can't get anything better than this. All right. It's that simple. So do resistance training, and you're going to be building muscle. And these micronutrients that are in this heirloom barley will help to detoxify your body, bring down inflammation, and soak up free radicals. And when you're doing that, you're boosting up your immune system. You're helping with your endocrine system. You're bringing down inflammation at the cerebral level. So you're helping with the health of your neurons. You're also helping with joint health. You're going to be able to recover quicker after your workout. You can't do that with whey protein. All right. This is the best. You can't get anything better than this. Now, let's say you want to get healthy or you want to build some muscle, right? This is a great way to do it. But some people, they'll go out to GNC and buy all this crap that's terrible for your gut. This is good for you. All right. So this has the micronutrients that you need. And when you take this every day, you're going to actually help to control your A1C levels. And guess what? In the United States, there's a lot of people that have they're either borderline diabetic or diabetic. So they're not controlling their A1C levels. You think whey protein is going to control your A1C levels? No. This will. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get this Gladiator barley. Do some resistance training. You don't have to look like Arnold Schwarzenegger, but this will help you to look like Arnold Schwarzenegger if you do more resistance training, like a bodybuilder, routine. But the whole idea here is to slow down the aging process, bring down inflammation, soak up free radicals, boost up that immune system, help with your brain function. And when you do that, when you're bringing down inflammation at the vascular level, you're reducing plaque formation. And that's just taking this high quality protein that is an heirloom barley. And when you're building up muscle and you're improving your musculature, you're building up bone density and better posture, and you're slowing down the aging process. So please take my advice, get the Gladiator barley, right? Do some resistance training and slow down the aging process. All right. And use discount 5, you get $5 off any order. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com.
Russia says it has successfully tested a nuclear-powered cruise missile
President Putin says the Burevestnik is invincible and cannot be stopped by any air defense system. But experts are skeptical. Powered by a small nuclear reactor, they've called the weapon a flying Chernobyl. US President Donald Trump is also far from impressed, declaring that Russia should concentrate on ending its war in Ukraine rather than testing new missiles.
This is the Burevestnik missile, known as Skyfall by NATO, being launched in 2018. The nuclear-powered cruise missile is a nuclear-capable weapon that Moscow says can get through any defense shield. Russia's top general told President Vladimir Putin this past weekend that the missile traveled 14,000 kilometers and was in the air for around 15 hours during a test launch last week.
During the missile's flight, all the required vertical and horizontal maneuvers were completed, thereby demonstrating its high capabilities for bypassing anti-missile and air defense systems.
But some experts have been skeptical of its reliability. In 2019, it reportedly suffered an explosion, which led to a spike in radioactivity. In 2023, Vladimir Putin announced a successful test of the weapon.
Well, the system is intended to defeat.
Frontify is the all-in-one DAM for leading brands. Everything begins in the DAM. Upload and organize your files in library.
Well, the system is intended to defeat a missile defense. And so the idea is because it can fly for basically an unlimited range, that it can fly around defenses. On the other hand, you could build more defenses, or you could use aircraft to go intercept them. So I don't think the system is invincible, but it's part of the deepening arms race that we're in, where they've come up with a new system and now we have to come up with something to shoot it down.
Last week, Russia released these images of ballistic weapons being launched. The flexing of Moscow's weapons capabilities comes amid growing frustration from Donald Trump over Russia's war in Ukraine.
I don't think it's an appropriate thing to say, by the way. You want to get the war ended, a war that should have taken 1 week is now in its soon 4th year. That's what you ought to do instead of testing missiles.
The Kremlin clapped back, saying it had to protect itself, pointing the finger at Europe.
The Europeans are gripped by hysteria that is Russia-phobic, aggressive and belligerent. Therefore, Russia must do everything possible to maintain the capability to guarantee its security.
But despite Russia's claims, it continues to strike Ukraine as European and US leaders push for peace talks between Kyiv and Moscow.
President Putin described the Burevestnik as a unique product that no one else in the world possesses. Lena Miron is a military expert at King's College London. I asked her whether this missile really is unique and whether it's any good.
Well, what we have to understand about Burevestnik is a bit of the context in terms of its uniqueness, what President Putin has claimed. This is not the first project of its kind. The very first one was launched by the United States during the Cold War in the 1960s. And it is believed that the Russians, or back then the Soviets, wanted to copy what the United States was doing. However, the United States had abandoned that project during the Cold War, and Russia has presumably continued working on this project. Also, there is nothing official. A lot of projects were shut down in the Soviet Union, especially prior to the collapse due to the economic situation. And so it seems that the Russians have then resumed this project in the early 2000s, and nobody else, as far as we know from official information, has been working on something similar. So from that perspective, yes, it is something unique.
Right. And as I understand it, what makes it so special is it's nuclear powered, not nuclear capable, nuclear powered. It can fly for a very long time and it can fly very low, which means that it's almost undetectable. But if I can put this in non-technical terms,
back in the early days of 1950s, all right, the United States wanted to have a bombing force permanently in the air, run by nuclear power. So the Air Force was doing all this development, creating jet engines that ran on nuclear power. But they decided to cancel it because they were afraid that they would blow up and be radioactive, or crash and be radioactive. So it was a bad idea. See, what they're trying to do is use a similar technology or a concept using nuclear power for subs and apply it to planes. This is back in the 50s. Thankfully, people had some common sense and decided not to do it. But the thing is that if you have missiles that are running on nuclear power, they can literally just fly around in the atmosphere for days, weeks, months, and then attack. Now, how are you going to be able to fight that? Now, do I think that this capability is prime time for Russia? No. But this is a perfect example that I said yesterday. Putin didn't take the off-ramp. And because he didn't take the off-ramp, he needs to die. The United States needs to send Tomahawks to Moscow and destroy Moscow. Because Putin doesn't understand anything but force.
Downable.
Why should it be unshutdownable? I mean, it is a problem to shoot down cruise missiles of any type because of their low altitude radars don't detect them in that range. But if this missile is detected, it can be shot down. The problem here is it can, because it has this small nuclear reactor engine, it can be in the air for a long time, and so it can approach its target from different directions. That's what might make it difficult. So detection would be a problem. Shooting down is not such a problem in itself, but detecting it would be problematic.
Is this missile or something like it?
If it's over your state and you shoot it down, let's say it's over, I don't know, Montana, and you shoot it down, you're going to have radioactive material all over a cattle field.
Likely to be deployed against Ukraine by Russia?
It is not the kind of missile that would be used in Ukraine or would make any sense to be deployed in Ukraine, because this is a nuclear capable missile. So this will be enhancing the Russian nuclear trade along with Poseidon and Avangard and Sarmat and the likes. And these are not the kind of missiles that make any strategic sense to be deployed in Ukraine. It is a missile that is a deterrent for the West, for the United States, but certainly has no use in Ukraine because Ukraine doesn't have sophisticated air defense systems that you would need to penetrate. The United States does, and you don't have a very long flight path to Ukraine as opposed to, say, the West Coast.
So this is a nuclear-powered missile. What happens to its nuclear propulsion unit when it hits the ground at hundreds of kilometers an hour?
We don't know. We don't know what the result of Russia's test. According to US intelligence reports, a lot of these tests have failed. So there were failures in 2017 or 2018, if I'm not mistaken, and radiation has been released, but we don't know what degree of radiation, how harmful it was. There were 5 casualties, I think, in the 2018 incident. The degree of harm is not known because there is so little information also when it comes to nuclear engineering and the design of the engine itself, of this nuclear powered engine. We don't know how it is designed and what safety measures were taken to prevent any potential radiation leaks. So it is a big unknown.
Right. Perhaps a naive question on my part, but are there rules around this sort of thing? Are there rules around nuclear contamination from propulsion units rather than missiles?
Well, as I mentioned before, there are guidelines that exist when it comes to nuclear engineering, be it engines, propulsion engines, be it nuclear power plants, in terms of how you design, so the design processes, safety measures that you need to take when you design something in order to avoid any potential pitfalls in the testing stage. But there is no ban on the use of such engines, and we do remember Australia purchasing nuclear powered submarines. Again, some countries don't like them, some countries don't like nuclear power, other countries use nuclear power and with a great degree of safety. So there is no specific ban on using nuclear engines now.
A final word about the timing of the news of this, the proposed talks about Ukraine between the US and Russia about peace there. They crashed and burned last week, and then Russia announces this. So coincidence or just part of more game playing?
Well, what I think,
you can't control the course or the competition, but you can control what you do next. Tiger.
Well, what I think there are several reasons for that. On the one hand, the Russians are very proud that now, after so many years, they have managed to successfully test this missile that could be in service as early as next year. So obviously, it was important to announce this because a lot of money has been poured into this project. The other thing is, of course, the informational aspect to it. Because if you look at all Russian sources, they're all hailing this missile. All Western sources are saying, well, it's there is a huge question mark in terms of its expenses, how many missiles could be in service, and how it works, and so on and so forth. So I think that the informational, psychological aspect here is also important, and against the background of possibly US sanctions against Russia, but there were some reports and some satellite imagery about a successful test potentially of Reykjavik back in August, so predating the Alaska meeting, Putin's Alaska meeting with President Trump. So possibly it is a way to reply to the US capabilities of what is known to be a prompt global strike. Probably it is a way to show that Russia is still very capable despite all the sanctions, develop some cutting edge technologies that the US doesn't have the means to intercept, and basically answering kind of that portion of the threat that Russia perceives from the global strike. And so again, this is a posture that Russia has assumed to show also that it is still powerful and it's not going to back down. So there are a lot of possibilities to interpret what the message is by saying that the tests have been successful. And I think it's directed at different audiences, but both domestically and internationally.
Thank you for that, Marina. Military expert Marina Miron from King's College London.
If we don't knock out Russia now, if we don't stop the belligerence of Putin, it's going to get a hell of a lot worse, because they're going to develop weapons that are going to create an instability in the world. Now, when they're developing these weapons, don't you think that they're going to want to sell them to China? This is the reason why I've switched my stance on Russia. At the very beginning of the Ukrainian war, I was against Putin going in, but I was also cognizant of the expansionism of NATO that caused Putin to feel threatened. Now, with Trump with his second term, and he gave an off-ramp to Putin and he didn't take it, Putin needs to die. Putin needs to die. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, get the magnesium and zinc. This will help to boost up your immune system and also help with your brain function. Magnesium has an additive benefit by increasing the efficacy of vitamin D3. Vitamin C and magnesium will help with your skin, boost up your immune system, and help with your brain function. A great stack is to take these together. In addition, you should get the vitamin D3. Vitamin D3 will help help with gene expression because it's a gene expression cofactor. Also, vitamin D3 helps to absorb calcium, so it's going to help with bone density. Vitamin D3 also helps with cardiovascular health. And taking vitamin D3 is super important during the fall and the winter season. Why? It helps cells to go into apoptosis when they're infected. In other words, it helps to clear the infection. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Get the vitamin C and magnesium, the magnesium and zinc, take it every day, and take vitamin D3 every day. Do some resistance training, but especially take this stack during the fall and the winter season. You're going to need it. Trust me. All right, let's listen in. Amazon is cutting a lot of jobs. Let's listen in on what's going on there.
I'm Erica Swenson, the Chief Financial Officer at Venture Solar. I don't have a lot of time to explain what my company needs and when we need it.
This is something that the companies all across the board have been doing since the pandemic era, what they call overhiring. A lot of these companies saw the growth and how people were relying on tech during the pandemic when they were home. They were obviously ordering a lot more from Amazon because they didn't want to go to the grocery store if they were at-home workers. And the company hired to accommodate that. And now they don't need as many people. But, you know, I heard your earlier point, Carol, about AI. I think that's part of it. But I also think that part of it is when these companies go through periods of opportunity where they see a lot of growth, they're seeing that trend line and they're hiring for the future. We're seeing it right now with AI. People are building out, these companies are building out data centers. They don't know if they're actually going to need all that capacity long term, but they better make that deal today, or else they might not have it when they need it. So we do see a lot of anticipatory investment from these tech companies over time that sometimes they need to pull back on. In big tech, we haven't seen as big a pullback as we have in the past few years since the pandemic. It's really been a change in the culture, this drive for efficiency, for reducing bureaucratic bloat. And it's not just line they're throwing out there. We are seeing my colleague Matt Day wrote a really interesting story I encourage everyone to read about AWS and how AWS was at the forefront of cloud, really inventing the market. And in the era of AI, they have fallen back in preference for startups. They had that big outage we talked about last month on this show. And some of the employees are attributing that to bloat, to this bureaucratic culture. Too many people working on the same things and things not getting done fast enough. So I think, although I hate to see people lose their jobs, I think that is where a lot of this is coming from, the idea that we need these companies in the age of AI to be working faster to try to catch the competitors.
I see a headline like this, Sarah, and I immediately think back to the prominent other headlines that I saw in the last week about big layoffs or mid-sized layoffs at a tech company. Meta Platforms laying off 600 people who work in AI, and then Target retail, not necessarily tech, but Amazon straddles that, right? And we don't know the details of these layoffs yet, but Target to cut 1,800 roles, 8% of its headquarters team. Taken together, is there a story with these three headlines?
Well, I think that the Meta headline and the Amazon headline are certainly related because they're all attributed to this idea of trying to move faster, to cut a lot of the, maybe unnecessary workforce, maybe workforce that they do expect one day will be augmented by AI tools or are already starting to be augmented by AI tools. But like we've said before, we don't know if the AI tools are actually making people more efficient. That right now it's more of a hope that will be the case. Certainly in coding, it's had a big role. I'm not sure, because we haven't been able to confirm the report just yet. I'm not sure if these are roles in coding. When it comes to Meta and AI, it's really interesting because they are still shuffling around the leadership and therefore the direction of this very expensive super intelligence team that they pulled together over the course of a few months earlier this year. And it seems like that is something that could give the potential of a slowdown for that company, but a lot is riding on Meta's AI efforts. Both companies, Amazon and Meta, I think we are going to have a lot to learn from this week in their earnings, which are coming Meta on Wednesday, Amazon Thursday. So I think that is going to be very key.
Yeah, totally agree with you that I feel like the earnings this week are a big deal to see that those AI investments are paying off. Hey, in the meantime, we're watching very closely what's going on with Qualcomm. They don't report until November 5th, but I'm looking at a stock, Sarah, that is up 12% at its highs, was up nearly 22% today. And this is after unveiling some chips and computers for the AI data center market. We know this is something that has made NVIDIA just on fire and at the center of the AI universe. What do we know about Qualcomm?
Well, they already have a major customer for these chips in the form of Humane, the Saudi company. And so I think that is giving investors a lot of hope that this can not only give them a very strong position in the AI growth as an alternative to NVIDIA, but also help make up for some of the revenue lost by Apple, who was a major customer, going to in-house chips. So I think they see it as very positive for Qualcomm. Of course, this chip is also getting a lot of buzz for its ability to hold quite a lot of DRAM memory. So I think, anytime that someone can make inroads in chips versus NVIDIA, the stock market is going to reward it, but we'll have to see if they're able to take on some of those big tech customers over time, or what their customer base is going to evolve into if this becomes a big part of their portfolio.
Yeah, I mean, time will tell. I mean, I was looking at our BI analyst in the Ian King story, basically saying, it's too soon to call this a serious challenge, right, to NVIDIA's dominance. Even modest share gains, though, in the over $500 billion AI accelerator market could translate into billions in incremental revenue. I mean, right, even this pie is so big, and it just seems to grow at this point, Sarah, that even a piece of it, or a decent piece of it, it could be a lot for Qualcomm if it all plays out.
No, absolutely. There's so much data center build out happening right now and happening over the course of the next few years. I think we're going to continue to see these multi-billion-dollar deals across the US and around the world. So I think that any player that can get in on that build out it's really significant. And I think that the time is really now. Chips don't last very long once they are unveiled. They maybe last 3 to 5 years before they're obsolete. So I think for those deals that are in the making in the moment, we're very interested to see what Qualcomm's gonna cook up.
All that hiring that she was talking about during the COVID days, the COVID years, and then all of a sudden in 2025, they have to do a massive layoff and it's not tied to AI. I disagree. I think that there is efficiencies that are taking place for AI, but that's not the bulk of the reason why they're laying off. They did overhire, but they should have been slowly reducing the staff back in 2023, 2024, maybe even the beginning of 2025, not the end of 2025. Why did they wait so long? COVID ended officially, around March of 2023. So why did it take so long? There's some efficiencies that are going on with AI. I think that there's also stress in the retail market, plus the expense with investing in AI. And so when you take this in a mosaic, that's, I think, the reason why there's so many layoffs. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the multivitamin. This multivitamin has the multivitamins that you need as cofactors for enzymatic activity so your cells perform better. This is part of the foundation of my anti-aging protocol. Take this so your cells will will perform better, your metabolism will be better. This is an easy to digest multivitamin. And stack it with the probiotics. You can get it in a powdered form or a veggie cap form. A good probiotic is going to help with your gut biome, allow you to absorb your nutrients better, ease the stress of digestion, improve your immune system at the gut level, improve your metabolism, and also help for your sleep pattern. When you sleep properly, you're consolidating memory, detoxifying your central nervous system, and you'll be well rested. And if you'll notice, your skin will improve too. Now, by taking a good probiotic, get the veggie cap version or the powder version from my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. By doing this regularly, your health will improve. It's the foundation of good health starts at the gut. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, get the powdered probiotic or the veggie cap version and stack it with the multivitamin. It's a very high quality multivitamin. It's easy to digest. Use discount 5 and you get $5 off any order. In addition, we're in the fall and winter season. You better be prepared because guess what? Something's circulating in your environment. Get the elderberry zinc lozenges. If you have a throat irritation, take these lozenges right away. Get a few bags for your household. I also have them in drop form. They're all structural nanosilver. You can get it in blueberry, you can get it in honey and lemon, and you can also get it in cherry flavor. Get a few bags for your household. But the moment you have that throat irritation, get the lozenges or the drops. Be prepared, have some at work, have some at home. You never know when you need it. But the moment you have that throat irritation, mitigate it right away, and it'll reduce the effects. Be prepared for this fall and winter season because it's going to be a doozy.
Here in New York City, we'll be picking between a socialist and a Democrat and a Republican. In New Jersey, Republicans are fighting to put the governor's seat red. It's been done before. While in Virginia, they fight to keep it away from Democrats. I love the way you say election. Yeah, you are so jealous.
America's newsroom co-host Bill Henry Jones is now to break it.
Well, guys, great show, great audience. I love all of it. Everybody good today? Delayed response here. I always think that elections, regardless of the outcome, tell a very interesting story for what people are thinking, what people are feeling. Yeah, it's like the after election report is just as interesting as the reporting leading up to it. But I think next Tuesday is going to be fascinating. And I know you guys will be watching, right? Late, deep into the night.
Crying, maybe. In New York.
Is there a sliver about when you look at the numbers?
Yeah, I'm going to take you over the board here. Should I do that now? The poll that came out yesterday, and so we'll go ahead and show you. So come on, Bill Hamel walk. Tuesday night, what we'll do is we'll be over here at the billboard and we'll break down what's happening in New York City and tell you what's happening in New Jersey, then in the Commonwealth of Virginia. This was a bit of a stunner yesterday. This is Suffolk poll, okay? Mamdani is below 44%. Cuomo's just ticking right toward 34, so it's a 10-point game. The middle vote here, does it break or does it stay with Sleeve? Or does Sleeve's number go higher? Don't know, but this is as close as Cuomo's gotten now during this entire election here, okay? This is 2021. You want to know how Democratic New York City is? The 5 boroughs now. Talking about 8.8 million people, roughly 4.5 million registered voters. Adams had no problem beating Sliwa with 2/3 of the vote, but there's a bit of a trend going on. I'm just going to try and explain it to you the way I see it currently, okay? These are the race results at the presidential level. All right, Trump got 30% of the vote, okay? The margin in 2024.
Let me do a side. Let me just go off on a tangent. I've met Bill Hemmer, all right, at multiple events, all right, for a philanthropic event that Fox News was tied to. He is one of the wussiest people that I have met in my life that is from TV networks. He in person, he is such a wuss. All right. With that, I know I went on a tangent. I probably shouldn't have. But in New York, Sliwa is going to take votes away from Cuomo, and it's going to allow for Mondami to get in. It's the same effect that happened during Bush Sr. and Clinton. Bush Sr. would have won if it wasn't for Ross Perot. Clinton became an accidental president. Clinton, even with his, Southern humor, admitted to it. He said he didn't think he'd win. And it was like, he was like a dog that caught the bumper of a car and didn't know what to do. That's how he phrased it when he won, right? So socialism, extreme ultra lib mentality is going to win out in the mayoral race because of Sliwa. Now, if Sliwa really cared about the city, he would have stepped down. Now, I understand he's he's a Republican and that, Cuomo's running as an independent and he's playing games because the primary, blah, blah, blah. But the bottom line is this. People aren't going, in New York, people aren't going to vote for Sliwa. Okay. So we have that issue. The other issue is that how many individuals are actually going to vote this season? Previous seasons, the turnout's not that great. Now this season, it probably will, the turnout will be much larger, but will it be enough where those people that are turning out be voting for Cuomo to prevent Mondami from winning? See, I'm going to vote for Cuomo, not Sliwa, because Sliwa isn't going to win. I don't want Mondami in. I don't want Cuomo in either. I don't like Cuomo. Never have. But the thing is, he's the better option compared to socialism. So Sliwa is going to take this away from Cuomo. Now, the only possibility that Cuomo can get through this and win is as if you have the elderly in New York voting for him, which is an uphill battle. Why? Because of what his stance was during COVID and the whole nursing home issue. And that working adults that aren't they're not retired, that are middle of the road, decide to go with Cuomo. Now, I think most of them will decide to go with Cuomo, but will they show up to vote? I don't know. So voter turnout is really important. Now, my take is that there's probably more working adults and elderly that if they band together, that Cuomo would come out ahead. But if the turnout's better than normal, but still low, then there's a high probability that Mondami is going to win. Because I think the younger turnout for Mondami is going to be pretty extreme.
Points, but the margin in 2020 was 23. So we cut it by 10, okay? Just hang on to that thought. Hang on to that idea here, okay? This is Jack Chittarelli that is pulling against Mikey Sherrill, down 5 points in the state of New Jersey. This is where Chittarelli was 4 years ago. He lost by 3.2 points. A lot of Republicans in New Jersey thought it was a foregone conclusion that the Democrat was going to win. They did not think it would be this close. Republicans in Jersey are saying, you got to get the vote out on behalf of Republicans. They will say 400,000 registered Republicans did not vote. Jack Chittarelli is coming up on a news program with Dana at the top of the hour here. We'll talk to him about that. Remember the trend now, right? In New York, do you see a shift toward the right in some of these states and some of these races? Here's Trump against Harris in New Jersey, lost by 6 points. But 4 years prior, he lost by 16. So we cut that margin by 10. Also, there's a similar trend here in New Jersey. Glenn Youngkin and whatever Terry McAuliffe 4 years ago, he can't run again based on the state constitution. Winsome Earl Sears is the Republican running there against Abigail Spanberger. He won it by 2 points, but this is what happened at the presidential level. Trump didn't win this state either, okay? He lost it by 5 points, but in 2020, he lost it by 10. right? See it, like all three races I'm showing you, the Republicans got closer on their margins, and we'll see ultimately whether that affects the outcome next Tuesday night. So come on back here and you guys can fire away any questions you got, or we can go to the audience, or.
Yeah, we're gonna go to the audience. Bill, good job. Thanks for breaking down the three big races.
I think we got Jack in the audience that has a question for Bill Hemmer. Where's Jack?
Hey, Jack, stand up.
Is Jack Chitterelli in the house?
Right.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, does anyone else have a
You
question?
don't have a nickname, Jack.
Yes, sir.
Listen.
California, Michigan. There's been a lot of focus on the New York and New Jersey races. Are there any other races across the country that we should be keeping our eye on?
I think at the local level there'll be a few, but the reason why we focus on these is because New Jersey and Virginia have off-year elections. So every 12 months after we elect a president in the White House, they'll hold a governor's contest in their states. It gives us a measure of how the president in office is doing. Oftentimes, like in the Commonwealth of Virginia, they'll vote against the party in power. Part of the reason why Youngkin went. Remember when they had that election in Virginia, that was only 2.5 months removed from the Kabul disaster. And so that was seen by many people as a referendum on Joe Biden.
How about, Proposition 50 is also intriguing, isn't it, out in California?
Out in California, they're going to vote as to whether or not they're going to gerrymander the states. And I don't know how it goes. It looks like it's hard to poll California, vote or no vote. But if they pass it, then Gavin Newsom, as the governor, has the opportunity to counteract a lot of what Republicans have been doing in states like Texas, which could offset things in the House of Republicans.
Bill, what's the truth about Mamdani? And will he have the ability to do all the things he's saying he's gonna do?
Well, free, me, right? Got to go through Albany, I do believe. That's the way it's set up here.
For bill cancellation day, we must unfortunately.
There's another story here. I don't think a lot of people have voiced this, but I'll just throw a theory out there. I believe if Mamdani is the winner or if Cuomo is the winner, we've yet to see ICE come into the 5 boroughs. We did see Homeland Security about 10 days ago. They raided a few guys down in Canal Street selling these fake handbags, and most of them had criminal records in the past. The possibility here is that Kathy Hochul has said.
This is the problem that I have with these talking heads, especially if they're just a bunch of wusses like Bill Hemmer. Not one of them has talked about the lessons learned from the Republic from Plato. Not one of them says anything about how Mamdani is antithetical to the Enlightenment by John Locke. Not one of them says that, you know what? The issue with the ultra-liberal and this democratic socialism is that they want to take away your property rights, which is antithetical to our founders in our Constitution. The reason why we have the Bill of Rights is to protect our property and, of course, our other inalienable rights. But the thing is that these people, they're not smart. That's why that's why they're a journalist. Journalists, most journalists are stupid. They're not engineers. They're not scientists. Most of them are stupid. And there's a bigger philosophical problem that's going on here. There's an erosion of the Enlightenment. Now, if we lose that, you're going to go into a fucking dark age.
We're done with that. We can't afford more people fleeing our state. By the way, New York, so a lot of people talk about California, people loading up the U-Haul and getting out of California. New York, percentage-wise, leads the country. And the number of people who have left the Empire State, she doesn't want any more of that. And, she made that clear the other night.
She's the rich left.
Yeah, on Sunday night, you're right. She, however, could come under enormous pressure from the progressive left, depending on how Mamdani governs. And you don't know, like over time, does he wear her down? So keep an eye on that. Back to the whole ICE story. It is quite possible that all these policies about free buses and free childcare, everything out, grocery stores, et cetera, freeze the rent, which, well, if you freeze the rent in New York, you only raise the rent in other people. I mean, landlords are in the business of real estate to make
money. So what happens is that if they have a subsidized rental, what's going to happen is that Well, they're just not gonna raise the rent for 2 years or 3 years. And then after those 2 or 3 years, that it'll go up. But many of these landlords own multiple properties. So to make up the difference, the non-subsidized units are actually gonna go up. So if you're living on the dole, socialism is gonna pay for you to help you out for approximately 24 months. And then your prices will rise even faster. But if you're not on the dole, you'll have to pay for other people. Well, wait a minute here. Why? Oh, because they can't afford to live in New York. Well, why are you in New York? You can go find some other place to live. See, this is the issue. People think that they deserve to live in New York. Well, no one deserves. We don't even deserve to have a country unless you fight for it, unless you protect those constitutional freedoms. No one deserves anything. Now, there's the problem. You have these. You have a poor class that's not educated, that's living in the boroughs, in the outskirts, and is having difficulties. Well, maybe they need to get more educated or be more skilled. Maybe it's not just formal education, but more skilled, and move to a different area. And maybe they'd be more prosperous. Why do they have to live in New York? That's one issue. Then you have the educated that come here thinking it's their right to be a bourgeoisie, right? But the thing is that they didn't build a business. Or they don't have the means to have this kind of lifestyle. Well, why do you have to live in New York? Oh, they went to a good school, and but the thing is that you don't have the skill sets that the companies that are here are looking for. So why don't you go someplace else? Why do you have to live in New York? Here's the problem. You have the educated that don't have skills, that can't get a job, that are pushing socialism in New York to take away from people that did the right thing and have skills and have a job.
A lot of these issues are put on the back burner. And the primary issue in New York would then become ICE agents in the 5 boroughs. And I believe, as I sit here today, Trump would be up for that fight. And so too would Mamdani. Yeah. Wow. And those could be some really ugly scenes in New York. Chitterelli is coming off with Danny.
Who gives a shit? Who gives a shit? They're here illegally. If you're here illegally, get the fuck out. It's that simple. Oh, they've been here for 20 years. Are you here illegally? Yes. Get the fuck out. Oh, they came here, 10 years ago. You here illegally? Get the fuck out. What is the issue here? Oh, they have children. So you got to have that emotional fallacy. You're tearing them away from an opportunity to be in America, but you're here illegally. Get the fuck out. Oh, they have kids that are going to the schools, and the schools need money. And it's all about the pupil headcount, not the citizenship. Oh, so the Department of Education in New York needs the money. So they need the illegal immigrants. Oh, New York is losing, not just New York City, but New York State is losing population. They're going to lose the potential representation in the House of Representatives. The number of seats is based on population. So they have to bring in people, fake the census, so they can keep the seats. Well, this is really important because population is also based on the Electoral College to vote for the President of the United States. And who are the two big, really there's 3, but who are the 3 big states that really skew the Electoral College? California, New York, and Texas. Michigan's a big one too. So 4. But the point here is that the big 3 are really important. So by illegal immigrants, Democrats are playing games. So they skew the Electoral College. because New York really doesn't deserve the number of electoral seats that they have. They've been faking the numbers through illegal immigration. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the omega-3. Omega-3 is going to help with your cardiovascular health. It's going to bring down inflammation and help with your lipid profile. Super important to take every day because you don't want to have a heart attack. Vitamin B complex, this will help to improve your ATP levels by improving the health of your mitochondria. The first 4 B vitamins, B1 through B4, will help with the electron transport chain, build up that ATP. You'll have more energy in your cells. Vitamin B complex also revs up the metabolism of your cells. And B12 helps to protect your neurons. This is really important to boost up that energy level, rev up your metabolism, and protect your neurons. And guess what? Because of the crisis of 2020, 30% of the people that are 40 years of age or older are going to get early onset of dementia. 30%. 30% of the, so you have a population that's 30% that's age 40 or older that will get early onset of dementia. Of that 30%, 75% of them are going to have ischemic issues that cause the early onset of dementia. That's either microbleeding or microclotting at the cerebral level. 24.5 to 24.9% of that 30% are going to have amyloidosis, building up a plaque, similar to Alzheimer's kind of stuff because of misfolding of proteins. And a very small percentage of that 30%, about 0.1 to about 0.5%, will be prion disease. So you better start paying attention to me because the aftershock of the crisis that we went through is going to cause a lot of people to have Swiss cheese brain on top of the big C. All righty. Please go to my store and get the resveratrol. Resveratrol will help with youthful gene expression, help with the health of your basal layer for your skin, soak up free radicals, and by doing that, improve your mitochondria so you have more ATP. And resveratrol also helps to get rid of cells that are in senescence. Take resveratrol every day. It stacks well with C60, clarity factor, ubiquinol, and NAD+. Let's talk about clarity factor because you don't want to be a stupid liberal like Madami. Clarity factor gets rid of that brain fog. And when you get rid of that brain fog, what do you see? You see the virtues of capitalism. Clarity factor gets rid of that brain fog and it allows you to concentrate. And by being able to concentrate on tasks, you're going to be more productive. And over time, you're going to improve that neuroplasticity and your neurons will communicate better and you'll be thinking faster and your memory will be improved. Stack this with resveratrol is a good stack with it. Also, the B complex is a neurostack, but it's important to take every day. Drink it with filtered water. Please go to my store and get the clarity factor. And when that cloud, that brain fog goes away and you can concentrate, you can understand the virtues of capitalism. You can understand the virtues of what Socrates and Plato was warning you about mob rule. You'll be able to understand the importance of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. But if you don't take clarity factor, you're probably going to be a crazy fucking liberal like Mandami.
Turn back briefly to Zoran Mamdani, because the fact that a 30-year-old Muslim communist in Uganda is not becoming mayor of a populous city really does matter. Last night, there was a big rally from Mamdani at a stadium in the city. AOC was one of the Ugandans' warm-up acts. And, it was not her best performance, I have to say.
Jews escaping Holocaust, Black Americans fleeing slavery and Jim Crow, Latinos seeking a better life, Native people standing for themselves, Asian Americans coming together in Queens, in Brooklyn, in the Bronx, in Manhattan, in Staten Island.
You notice they're all angry? Well, wait a minute here. My family All right. They different sides of the family. My father's side of the family came to the United States way early, like 1637. All right, through Boston. And then my mother's side of the family came over in two different waves. One was in the 1800s and the other one was in 1929. All right. So, but you would be hard pressed to find a family that has fought in so many fucking wars that the Americans have participated in. All right. So, my family, all right, they fought in World War II. My grandfather was a CB in the Navy during World War II. My great uncle was part of Airborne shooting fucking Nazis for a living. And then we had some, other uncles that were in the Army and in the Air Force. I think one of the uncles passed away in the Air Force during World War II, but I don't know all the details about that. But the point here is that this is a person that comes from a pedigree that fought in almost every single fucking war that the country has been in, going all the way up to, or served during the era, going all the way up to Iraq. Almost every fucking war, including the revolution. Now, I don't know what the fuck she is talking about, because I don't understand why people are in this country illegally and they get better benefits they get more benefits from the government than people that are here legally and that are in need. Let me give you an example. You have people that are here illegally with a family member, and they are getting support from the government and from nonprofits. And when you put that together, it's what sustains them. They're here illegally. Now, look at what's happening with our veterans, where they're not getting the health care that they need, or the housing, or retraining for work, and they're living on the streets. And yet they fought in our wars. How can we allow for that to happen? What about a citizen, an American citizen, elderly, choosing between eating or taking their medications? And guess what? This is happening a lot. A lot. Or they cut their medication. And they don't realize that when they reduce their dosage or they skip a dose, that it actually is causing more problems with their heart. It happens a lot because they can't afford it. But yet they're an American citizen. But you have an illegal that gets all these fucking benefits while our veterans and our elderly are not? That's wrong. That is wrong. So we got this out of control, angry bitch that's part of the Democratic Party, but not just part of the Democratic Party, part of the ultra left Democratic Party.
This is what counts as a stirring oratory on the left. All you gotta do is scream out a list of various ethnic and racial groups, making sure to list all of them except for white people. And this is a list that AOC jams into every speech she's ever given, and yet she still stumbles over it. So practice does not make perfect in her case, it turns out. But the main event was Mom Donnie himself. We've already discussed extensively the fact that Donnie's a third world communist Islamist grifter con man who is only a viable candidate because half of the city wasn't born in this country and many of them can't even speak English. But now I want to focus on the actual policies that Ugandan communists can't.
Let me get this straight. I come from a pedigree where I have ancestry that immigrates to the United States in 1637, fought in the Revolution with George Washington, and I got these fucking liberals They want to tax my fucking cookies. Totally unacceptable.
He's proposing. We're told by his supporters, the ones who can speak English anyway, that Mamdani is popular because of his policies. So what are these popular policies? Well, here he is outlining what he considers to be his top 3 proposals. Listen.
Here is what we stand for, my friends. We are going to freeze the rent for more than 2 million rent-stabilized tenants.
We got 8 million people in New York. 2 divided by 8 is 1/4. One quarter of the people in New York City are going to get stabilized housing.
And use every resource at our disposal to build housing for everyone who needs it. We are going to eliminate the fare on every single bus line. And make what—
Let me get this straight. So you got homeless people sleeping on the bus now? That's going to turn out really well. I remember during my good old days for pre-med at Fordham University, I'd have to wake up early in the morning, go to the lab, chemistry lab, and I'm taking the 405 train and going towards Grand Central, and almost always there'd be this homeless person, you know, laying on the bench in the train. And many a time, not every time, but many a time, they'd be taking a shit in the corner of the train cab. That's New York for you. It's crazy. It's crazy.
Be the slowest buses in the nation move around this city with ease. And we are going to create universal childcare at no cost to parents.
Who's going to pay for all this? Free buses, subsidized housing, free childcare. Who's going to pay for all this? How's it just free? This is the problem with Marxism. So let me get this straight. My grandfather fought in World War II to push back the Japanese to make sure that our bombers could hit Japan. And my great uncle, airborne, shot Nazis for a living. They're both dead now. But the thing is that if they heard this shit, they would literally helicopter in to that rally, get on stage, tear off his fucking head, and shit down his throat. And this is the problem that we have. The point I'm making is that there was a generation that fought in World War II that was the greatest generation. And the reason is that they had balls. They got the job done. They came from all walks of life, but they had purpose and they could get the job done, and that they had virtue. There was a virtue to them. They had an affinity to God, country, and family. What is this crap? What is this crap that he's promoting? Because it's sure as hell what my grandfather and my uncle didn't fight for. What the fuck is this shit?
So New Yorkers can raise their family in the city they love. Together, New York, we're going to freeze up. Together, New York, we're going to make buses.
Let me get this straight. So you can live in the city you love. well, wait a minute, why do you deserve to be here if you can't afford it? See, this is the problem with the intelligentsia. Go to a decent liberal school, which he did. He couldn't get into Ivy League. But the thing is that he came from a well-to-do family, doesn't have any job experience, and he's going to push Marxism. This is a classic theme with these people. Overly educated, liberal arts education with no real skills, no real job prospects, run for office and tell every stupid person out there that you're going to get things for free. And this is the warning that Socrates and Plato said. Beware of the plebs, because they're stupid.
That's it. Together, New York, we're going to deliver universal. We will make our city one where every person who calls it home can live a dignified life.
So Mamdani's big ideas are to freeze rent, meaning landlords will be legally prohibited from raising the rent, to make buses faster and free for everyone, and to make childcare free for everyone. This is Mamdani's genius 3-step plan to make New York City affordable. The Ugandan has cracked the code. To make a city affordable, all you have to do is pass a series of laws requiring that it be affordable. Mamdani is going to take his magical wand, which he bought from...
And besides taxing my cookies, let me get this straight. Mamdani doesn't even remember the fall of the Berlin Wall because he wasn't even born. And there was a grand experiment right after World War II. Capitalism on the west side of Europe, communism on the east. Fast forward from 1945 or 46 to the fall of the Berlin Wall. And it proved that capitalism is more protective for a society than communism. So that grand experiment that took place during the Cold War proved that Marxism failed. But Mamdani doesn't remember that. He has no experience of it, nor did he learn it in school.
Ugandan witch doctor by trading 2 goats and a pineapple, wave it around, and make everything free and good and wonderful and faster. The buses will not only cost nothing somehow, they'll even be faster. So that's all. This is crazy. I never knew. All it takes to make stuff affordable is for someone in government to go, hey, things have to be affordable now. Hey, all you better make things affordable. All you have to do is shout at the housing market and say, be affordable. And it will be.
Mamdani doesn't understand the invisible hand of Adam Smith. And that if you work hard, have some luck, and persevere, you'll have a more productive society. Oh, but he wants everything for free. Well, who's going to be controlling the freebies? Ooh, the intelligentsia. So what happens is that when people buy into this crap and they stop trying, the society starts to devolve, and you have these group of people that are running the towns, the cities, the states, the countries. And eventually what they do is they live an opulent life while the plebs are worse off because they can't find jobs because the capitalists went away. Isn't this what Ayn Rand said about Atlas Shrugged? Ayn Rand said, you keep on pushing socialism and the producers, the capitalists, are going to leave. They're going to go find an island somewhere. And guess what? All of a sudden, everyone doesn't work. People can't get clothing because it's not made anymore. Things start falling apart. And eventually you go into the dark age. Socialism never works. Never.
It's magic. Now, if you've been paying attention to the history of Western civilization over the past 200 years or so, you'll know that all of these proposals have been tried many times before, and they've all failed. Every time, in every place they've ever been implemented. The only places that have even come close to achieving any sort of success with these ideas are small, homogenous, all-white European countries. But even there, it hasn't really worked out. And it certainly has never worked and can never work in a large, crowded, extremely racially and ethnically diverse population center. And that is all that should need to be said. But that would make this segment too short, so I'll keep talking. So let's take
egalitarian society, that's tongue twister, egalitarian society only works when the populations are low density. And like he said, homogenous. Egalitarian societies are like the Indians, like American Indian, right? Small clans that need to work together to survive because they were hunting and gathering. But once you start having a complex economy, there is no fucking way in the world that a controlled economy works. I can't believe that you have so many people here that are educated in New York that are buying into this fucking horse shit.
This proposal is wonderful. It shouldn't be necessary to explain the problem with freezing rent. Only someone who is, and I mean this in the medical sense, truly, but only someone who is mentally retarded could ever think that you can make housing affordable by telling landlords they can't raise the rent. If it were that easy, okay, the policy would be implemented everywhere, and we would be living in a utopia of 4-bedroom, spacious, pristine, $800 a month apartments. But no such utopia exists, and that's because there are many costs associated with being a landlord. And the freeze on rent does not freeze any of those costs. Okay, as a landlord, you have maintenance fees, legal fees, leasing fees, property management fees, gas, electric, trash collection, water, sewage, lawn care, repairs, plumbing, pest control, cleaning, not to mention property insurance, property taxes, potentially HOA fees. And that is just a partial list. Now, what happens when those costs continue to rise, even as rent is forced to stay the same? You end up with rental properties that owners can no longer maintain. You end up with foreclosures. You end up with no incentive to build or rent new properties. You end up with a drastic reduction in the housing supply, exactly what has happened every time these policies have been attempted elsewhere. So to review, by freezing rent, what you get is fewer rental properties available, and the ones that are available are in worse condition. So, congrats. Now, what about making the bus free? Well, we've already talked about this actually at some length, leaving aside the fact that you're losing a lot of fare revenue, which means taxes will be raised to make up for the losses, which means the bus actually is not free, because nothing is free, nor can ever be free, as any moderately intelligent 7-year-old understands. But leaving that aside, all you'll accomplish, as has happened everywhere that this has been implemented, is turning buses into roving homeless shelters.
Exactly.
Because now the already meager barrier keeping the homeless from setting up camp on buses and proceeding to make the experience even more miserable, disgusting, dangerous, and not to mention pungent for everybody else will be lifted. So that's not going to benefit working New Yorkers who can afford the bus fare in the slightest. It is purely a benefit for homeless.
Why doesn't Mandami step up to the plate and say, our veterans need to be taken care of? Our elderly need to be taken care of to make sure that they have the medication and the food that they need and the shelter. But the rest of the society, they need to pick up their pants, pull it up, brush their teeth, make their bed, and go to work. Be productive instead of looking for a fucking handout. But our veterans, especially the ones that are wounded and that need help and are elderly, that's a big problem. Big problem. You know, one of the saddest things to see in clinic is actually seeing an elderly patient that isn't able to afford their medication. Or you can tell that, that they are on a fixed income and they are choosing between eating and taking medication. And we're the most prosperous society in existence of mankind. The United States is the most prosperous country ever on the planet. Ever. But what allowed it to happen? This concept of the Enlightenment, this concept of life, liberty, and property rights. It's a foundational concept that our founding fathers built off of and created the Constitution. The Constitutional Republic guarantees those property rights. But you got this Marxist that wants to take that away. Now, John Locke said this: you take away life, liberty, and property, and it's the obligation and the moral reasoning to fight back, to revolt against people that are taking away your life, liberty, and property.
They cracked down vagrants. As it happens, most of Mamdani's policies are tailored primarily
for
to that demographic.
Yeah, exactly.
Universal child care is by far the worst of these disastrous ideas. And let's leave aside again the fact that it is catastrophically expensive. There is no such thing as free child care. You know why? Because the child care providers are not slaves. You have to pay them. They cost money. And so it's not free and can never be free. I said before that nothing is free. There is one exception to that. Something can be free with slavery. Okay, so if you really want free stuff, then we got to talk about having slavery. That's the only way to do it. You want free stuff, you want to get things for free, you want free childcare, you want free this, you want free that. Well, the one way to do it is slavery.
Slavery isn't free either. You have to house the slaves, you have to feed the slaves, you have to clothe the slaves, right? Even slavery isn't free.
You have free buses, maybe, if the bus drivers are slaves and the buses are maintained by slaves, then you could have probably have free buses too. So that's the only way. So when you talk about you want stuff to be free, I can only assume that what you're making an argument for is to bring back slavery. But if you don't want slavery, then there is no such thing as free. So get that stupid word out of your stupid mouth. And realize that someone has to pay for it, because we have to pay for the labor that goes into this. All you're doing is shifting the cost. And in this case, rather than having parents pay for their own child's care, you're forcing strangers, taxpayers, to pay for the care of other people's children. Those are the only two options when it comes to childcare. There is no third option aside from slavery. Either parents will pay for their child's care or strangers will. And call me crazy. Call me cruel. Call me a mean old guy who lacks compassion. But I tend to think that if anyone should pay for your child's care, it should be you. If you're sitting there thinking, who is going to pay for daycare for my child? You know my answer? You. Because the only other option is someone who is not you. And I think making someone who is not you pay for your child is wrong. Why? Because he's your child.
Yep.
And not this other person's child. You see, that's why. You are first on the list of people.
Let's get back to the first principles: God, country, and family. Wait a minute here. The ones that are asking for the freebies to have the nanny state, that's pushing the nanny state, do you think they're really about family? Because if you have a high affinity for family, you'll take care of them. That's like part of the whole social contract. You take care of family. Blood is thicker than water. No, the nanny state's going to take care of you.
Who should be on the hook? Who should pay for your child's babysitter? You. Not Jim down the street. Not me. not anyone else. So to me, that seems like the simplest and fairest, and also, by the way, by far the cheapest option.
And then they're going to say,
But
well,
even
we need to have the free health care so they can go to work because it's so expensive to live in New York. Well, wait a minute. Why do you have to live in New York? Why can't you go live someplace else? But this is the city we love. Why do you love it so much?
Or that issue, which we really can't. Experience has shown, including in Quebec when they implemented this 30 years ago, that universal childcare leads to a dramatic drop in the quality of care. Staffing shortages and low quality care are nearly guaranteed in this kind of system. This is inevitable because an increase in demand is also guaranteed. Because now that childcare is free, but not really free, more families will choose to drop their kids in daycare. I mean, that's the whole reason they do this. We get more kids in daycare. Well, but then we don't have enough staff to keep up with it, so there's staffing shortages, and then the quality of care goes down. And all that is really bad news because multiple studies have also shown conclusively that children raised in daycare have noticeably worse outcomes than children raised in their own homes. The US NICHD study of early child care and youth development, among other major long-term studies, have shown that children who are placed in full-time daycare before the age of 4 have higher rates of defiance, impulsivity, anxiety, aggression. This is exactly the result you expect. And exactly the result you find. So the last thing we should do if we want a functional and healthy civilization is encourage more families to send toddlers into daycare and mothers into cubicles. There is no discernible benefit to society to that arrangement.
Yep.
It's all bad all the way down. So this is what Mamdani promises. Less and worse housing, buses overrun by homeless, drugged out rapists, understaffed daycare centers where your child can go to become more anxious and more aggressive. That's what he's promising. And if you vote for that, you're going to get it. And you'll deserve it. And you will be, by your own choice, today, Keynes. Hey, YouTube, thanks for listening to the show. If you'd like access to my full show with no ads,
Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the olive leaf extract. This will help with your cardiovascular health and your immune system. It brings down inflammation and controls your lipid profile. You should be taking this every day to improve your cardiovascular health. Do a little bit of resistance training and cardio too, and take that supplement to improve your cardiovascular health. I have dual purpose deodorants that will help to detoxify your body, and you use it as a daily deodorant. It's made from essential oils from the Himalayas, extremely high quality ingredients, no aluminum, no baking soda. Use this every day and it'll help to detoxify your body. Now, you can get it in citrus. You can also get it in peppermint, lavender, and tea tree. It's for males and females. Get a couple bars for your household. Use it every day, and it's going to help to detoxify your body too. And when you do that, you're improving your immune system and your endocrine system, and you're going to smell good. Also, get the Goodnight formula. Now, there's a lot of stuff that's going on, like communism in New York City. And maybe you can't sleep. Well, take the Goodnight formula every night, drink with filtered water. And what this will do is allow you to get in the 3 to 5 cycles of REM sleep and deep sleep that you need to consolidate memory, to detoxify your central nervous system, and to be well rested. And when you have a good sleep regularly, you're going to actually slow down the aging process. This has tryptophan, melatonin, GABA, and passion flower. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the Goodnight formula. Make sure you use discount 5, all caps, discount the number 5. You get $5 off any order. Go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. The link is in the description of this video and all my videos. All righty. Let's listen into I want to listen into the Hill about this layoffs from Amazon.
Building more affordable housing is critical for our city. This November, New Yorkers can vote on an affordable housing fast track and other city charter reforms. So flip your ballot over and vote on questions 2 through 6.
Amazon is going full speed ahead with laying off a chunk of its workforce. The company said Tuesday that around 14,000 employees will actually be let go.
Now, Amazon says the reason for the layoffs are to trim bureaucratic bloat, make their company leaner, and to invest in artificial intelligence. The company said in a blog post, quote, "This generation of AI is the most transformative technology we've seen since the internet, and it's enabling companies to innovate much faster than ever before in existing market segments and altogether new ones. We're convinced that we need to be organized more leanly with fewer layers and more ownership to move as quickly as possible for our customers and businesses."
I wonder if the person who wrote that is going to lose their job too.
Probably, that's what
That's sort of thing ChatGPT do is write the statement, the bland statement we just read. Reuters is reporting that the tech giant could be laying off up to 30,000 employees, largest cut in the company's history. Amazon has more than 1.5 million staffers globally and is the second largest private employer. As far as tech and corporate employees, the company has about 350,000.
Some social media users were not happy about the announcement. Executive Director for Campaign for New York Health, Melanie Diargio, wrote on X, quote, "Amazon receives billions in tax breaks while reporting billions in profit, and while replacing 600,000 jobs with robots. The only thing that ever trickles down is the exploitation."
Others, however, have tried giving a more practical approach to the inevitable job market transformation. Mark Cuban went on tech podcast TBPN advising young students, quote, "Companies don't understand how to implement AI right now to get a competitive advantage. Learn to customize a model, walk into a company, show the benefits. That is every single job that's going to be available for kids coming out of school." Yeah, we have very little time to discuss this because we've been going hard on some topics today, but I agree with Mark Cuban. Look, these are, by the way, this is the jobs being cut here. This is actually not people working in Amazon warehouses. This is middle.
A lot of the conversation was who's going to pack the boxes.
Right. So far, still mostly people.
Okay.
This is middle manager, corporate tier people who, I'm sorry, don't go to school to get a degree in writing a press release. Don't do that. That's not a good job. That is the easiest thing for AI to take your job, is if your job is to write press releases. Like very basics comms functions. I don't want to scare
the
people.
only middle manager job.
You're getting cleaned out. If you have a vague sounding corporate job where you're just kind of overseeing but not really directly managing a product, AI is replacing that. If your job is to send emails or schedule meetings, AI is replacing you. You're done. Don't do that.
But here's the thing.
Reality.
So as much as I like to be
And it's
smart, like I told you, effective with money, I think like the fact that AI works 24/7, there's no sick days, right? There's not really a salary because whatever it just costs to use that technology. Like you are now taking the competition out of the market for people who do these different type of roles.
You're adding to the competition.
Well, you're making it
fiercer.
No, it's almost like when people argue like you're not one of these people, but who don't want migrants at all because their labor's cheaper, so now they're bringing the cost
Right.
out.
I want migrants because I want to lower the cost of the.
No, but now AI is going to come in and do these middle manager jobs, and so now middle managers across the world get paid less because Amazon, who we made $1 billion company, all Americans by using. I mean, most of us use this.
We made it by it being better.
Yes, but we also use it every day. They got us addicted to it now. They're like, no job.
Well, that makes it sound like it's not addictive, like it's better.
No, but I get nail polish. I need nail polish remover. I get that. Like,
I don't think there's anything wrong with that. It has massive.
We supported you as Americans, and now just cut all of our jobs. Nobody gets to work. You lose your job. You lose a job. You lose a job.
Well, no.
What about the emotion? I'm a little more emotional than you, Robbie. I feel like they need to really care about the emotion that goes into
emotion. There's no room for emotion in business. We must dispassionately put profit and lower prices first, and firms that do that succeed, and firms that get emotional fail. And that's just the way it's gotta be. I don't know. This is my emotional.
That does it on Rising Live. Look out for more exclusive YouTube content coming your way all day today. Be sure
All right, I don't know. Well, no, that's a longer video. There's an interesting video that's dealing with a poll that 65% of Democrats support socialism. I'll tell you. Just, again, you can't make this stuff up. It's crazy. It's absolutely crazy. Let's see here. Let's listen into Bloomberg right now. Oh, the market is faltering a little bit today. The S&P 500 is trading at 6,872 at the moment. VIX has gone up a little bit. It's at 16.32.
An indicator of stress, and really as it drags on, we do sort of amp up our monitoring, particularly on some portfolios like, GARVs that are issued by some transportation entities. We're looking at other, bonds that are backed by federal payments, whether that be federal leases, where they might be leasing space in a particular commercial office building or something like that.
Okay, I'm gonna play a video by CNBC where they interviewed Bill Gates about AI. But before we do, please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and don't be a crazy liberal, okay? Be a capitalist. Get the digestive enzyme complex. This will help to break up and digest proteins, carbohydrates, and lipids. Reduce the load on your pancreas, which is super important. When you get older, your pancreas doesn't work as well, no matter how healthy you are. All right? Taking digestive enzyme complex is super important to help you to digest your foods properly and to reduce that load on the pancreas. This also has bromelain, which helps to break up clots because it's fibrinolytic. And this digestive enzyme complex has the proteolytic enzymes that you need to break up glycoproteins. This is the reason why I said, take the digestive enzyme complex during the crisis of 2020. Because the spike is made from glycoproteins. And, you wanted to reduce clots. You remember that issue, right? So it behooves you to take this every day to help with your digestion, but also during the fall and the winter. Why? Because guess what? More people are going to get clots. And more people are going to be exposed to glycoproteins. Myotrol. Myotrol will help to build muscle. When you get older, once you hit about age 40, your genes don't express the same as when they were younger. It's called methylation of genes. Your genes shut down or express less. To help express genes to build muscle and to maintain muscle, you need to take Myotrol. Do some resistance training. The flavonoids, polyphenols, and lignans that are in here will help with the gene expression to build muscle. And that way, you're reducing atrophy, you're building muscle, and you're slowing down the aging process. Myotrol will also help with your mitochondrial health, so you have the energy to build and maintain muscle. This is super important to take if you're 40 years of age or older. Make sure when you do your resistance training to build your back muscles. That's an underdeveloped area of your body. You really need to build back muscles to help you into your geriatric years. That way you have better posture. And with that better posture, you're going to have better lymphatic flow and better venous flow. In addition, by building up more muscles in your back and doing resistance training, you're building denser vertebrae. Super important. See, if you look at people that are getting older, what happens? They start shrinking. Their spine starts to go down. The musculature starts to weaken. They start to lean forward. Well, if you build your back muscles, your posture improves, your bone density improves, and that whole musculature at the different levels, right? You have different muscles in your back. You have internal muscles, and then a mid-range muscle, and then outer muscles that are more closer to the surface. But when you're working your back muscles and do lots of different exercises to build back muscles, you will notice that you are healthier. You're slowing down the aging process by just doing that. See, most people, they're so focused on, maybe curls and the core, but the front core or legs. But they don't really work their back, if you notice. Most people don't work their back. And that's an area where aging starts. When you get older, you start pulling a muscle in your back, and then all of a sudden you can't move around very well. Well, if you have strong back muscles, that doesn't happen. So take my advice, because I know what I'm talking about. Go to my store, get the Myotrol, do resistance training, and make sure you build up your back muscles. Use discount 5 and you get $5 off any order. And with strong muscles, you'll be able to fight the socialists even in your geriatric years.
Under Bill Gates publishing a new essay on climate. It's aimed at to deliver a message ahead of COP30, and he's suggesting that the climate community should shift its strategy from temperature and emission targets to the impact on human lives. An exclusive interview on that topic. I also asked him if he is worried about whether.
What about human lives with forced inoculations? What about human lives with artificial food? Bill Gates, I'll tell you, that guy just needs to just die.
AI bubble. Here's what he had to say.
We need to define bubble. If what we mean is like tulips in the Netherlands, that they eventually looked back and said, what the heck? There was nothing there. Those were just tulips. No, that's not where we are. If you mean it's like the internet bubble, where in the end, something very profound happened. The world was very different. Some companies succeeded, but a lot of the companies were kind of Me Too, fell behind.
Right. There is an element that is very similar to the dot-com bubble, but I'm even more worried because of the new regulations or deregulation of the banking industry and the finance industry, creating new engineered products like ETFs that wrap underlyings of private equity and private credit. You have a whole crypto market. You have derivatives being created. So there's new financial engineering instruments that are being developed, which is very similar to what was happening during the trust boom and bust during the railroads. So they were laying track. They were building up an industry, the railroad industry. There were trusts that were creating commercial paper that wasn't really backed by anything, and eventually everything collapsed. Now this happened in, I want to say 1907, 1906. I'd have to confirm that. But basically it was Knickerbocker was the trust that blew up, that set in motion everything. I have a feeling that AI, because of this huge build out with the servers, is going to be more like the trust boom and bust during the railroad years in the United States than the dot-com bubble because of the financial engineering. Now, I could be wrong, but there are similarities to the dot-com bubble because it's tech, right? But if dot-com bubble does burst and it affects the economy much worse, I'm sorry, if the AI bubble bursts, let me rephrase it. If the AI bubble bursts and it affects the overall economy much worse than the dot-com bubble, then it's more like the trust bust, the boom and bust during the railroad years.
Burning capital companies, absolutely. There are a ton of these investments that will be dead ends.
And you look at all the investments that are being made today by some of the big tech companies.
I think
some
most
of them are not making money on AI yet, but are making massive commitments to chip makers and data centers and say this math makes sense.
Right. And this is the worry that I have, is that there's a systemic, if it's what I think it will be, like the railroad bust, then there will be a further systemic problem that happens in the economy. The dot-com bubble, yeah, it sold off and, it did layoffs, but it bounced back relatively quickly. Now, I'm not saying that this AI bubble burst, is going to be like Lehman. I don't think so. I don't think it'll be like 1929 either. But I think it would be worse than what the dot-com bubble was.
Biggest technical things ever in my lifetime. I mean, it is so profound, and therefore its influence is hard to overstate. And the economic value, this is basically intelligence, where you can get medical advice, so you can get a tutor, or you can get somebody to help you design drugs. So the value is extremely high, just like creating the internet ended up being, in that, very, very valuable. But you have a frenzy, and some of these companies will be glad they spent all this money. Some of them, they'll commit to data centers whose electricity is too expensive, that it can be done overseas, or they'll buy a generation of chips and they won't have captured all their value before the next one comes along. But if you want to be a tech company, you don't get to say no. Let's check out of this race.
What do you think the public appetite for this is ultimately going to be? And I ask because I think there's concerns about two things that are happening right now. One is energy costs. So there's a whole bunch of places where people want to put data centers, and the community says, no, we don't want this because we don't want to have to spend more money for power to power our own homes. At the same time, they're worried that if they actually are successful, they'll also lose their jobs.
We need to put things like terra-powered nuclear reactors in places where it's very clear that you're not raising the residents' electricity bills because that's being put in there. Historically, nuclear was done in a way that the utility bore a lot of that liability. That business model won't get repeated. So we need to make sure to pick locations where the economics and the political acceptance is very, very strong. We don't have permission to drive up people's electricity costs. In terms of the jobs, this is going to take some period of time. But yes, although it hasn't been seen in large numbers, over the next several years, there will be some impact on the job market. Nowadays, when you say that, some people are like, well, how can you say that? Isn't that going to slow the US down in this race? But it's only honest for people to speak frankly about the fact this will have a big effect on the job market.
And of course, Gates is a longtime capitalist, so I talked to him about the industrial policy coming from the White House, including the U.S. taking
well-heeled tech bros and tech grandfathers like Bill Gates, they know that, at least in the short run, many people are going to lose their jobs. The question is will there be a creative destruction where there will be more job creation after that? So you got to look at this in different periods of time or phases. So as AI is building out and being implemented and making businesses more productive, what will happen is that there is a increase in jobs that have certain skill sets to be able to use the AI and implement them. But as time goes on, they start to not hire so many. It becomes codified within the company, because companies that are starting to implement something new, they usually throw more money at it and more resources. But once it's stabilized, they start pulling back. So what happens is that first phase, there's CapEx and hiring of people to manage those projects. once it's implemented and it's stabilized, then they start to reduce the amount of funding or the number of people that are on the project. And some people that are on these projects aren't interested in just maintenance. They want to start something new and they go to a different company or maybe start a new business. But the thing is that what you'll have a period of time where people are upskilling and getting jobs. Look at what's happening with Meta, right? And then all of a sudden they lay them off. But I think Meta is poorly managed, but that's a different story. But you have this phase where it's being implemented now, then you see the efficiencies, you don't need as many people, you may keep the staff on, but you're not hiring new. So the people that are trying to enter the market, the job market, that are fresh out of college are having problems. We're seeing that now, right? And individuals that are older that have lost their job can't get in. So they've stabilized the number of people that they really need in their organization. Then all of a sudden a recession happens and they further cut and they find ways to use AI to not rehire the individuals that they laid off. Now we're not at that phase yet. We have to wait for the recession. And when the recession happens, or a depression, you either have structural unemployment or cyclical unemployment. Structural unemployment means something has happened to the economy and the jobs aren't coming back. And you have to find other means of employment. So there's a structural change that took place with the industry, the economy, or just that company. Another aspect to recessions is cyclical unemployment, where it's basically there's a layoff because there's a decline in demand, maybe an oversupply of goods and services, and eventually once the equilibrium happens again, then the economy gets out of the recession and they start rehiring. But that's cyclical. We're being able to be reemployed at the same company or in the same industry or with the same skills or the same type of job. That's cyclical. But when it's structural unemployment, that means that the job market has changed permanently. Now, when we go through our next recession, the job market is going to be a permanent structural change. And that's when you're going to have the massive layoffs and the massive unemployment. And when I say mass, I'm saying 10% or more of the population. Some people are even saying, 24, 25%, maybe 30%. But I think that we're at an unemployment rate of about 4.2, 4.3%. I think it could go all the way up to 10 or 12%. And that will be structural. And that will be very similar to what it was like in the 70s. So people will be struggling, and there's going to be bills that will be passed that will start to regulate AI. But that will only happen when the recession happens. Now, once it gets out of the recession and there's some sort of regulation on AI, the question is, will there be new businesses that are created and more activity in the economy, or will this be a downward spiral? Now, if you are dystopic, then you're going to think that it's just going to be a downward spiral. And there's these decoupling of labor and capital, and the over-indebtedness at the family level or at the societal level will be so burdensome that the society collapses. That's dystopic. The more positive pathway is that during that recession, in coming out of that recession, there's a creative destruction that takes place. New businesses will happen. Now, if you use this as an example, what is called a bifurcation diagram. Bifurcation diagrams can model complex systems. It's part of chaos theory. But what will happen is that if a system is stable, all right, it doesn't bifurcate. And if it does bifurcate, it doesn't bifurcate quickly. All right, it's slow. But when some variable happens that it increases its bifurcation, Like, for example, if you take a pathogen and you're mapping out the mutations, if it doesn't infect different species, right, and it doesn't circulate in the environment, the mutation rate is relatively slow. But when you add in conductivity of a society, higher populations, whatever, the chances of mutation increases. So when you have more conductivity within a complex system, there's more chance, and whatever you're modeling has the ability to be modified, mutated in a way, then you're increasing the chances of bifurcation from the parent. And you have children, or a new variant of a pathogen, or you have something that has been modified. And so what happens is that if you have more conductivity within a population, more activity, economic activity, and you have this disruption, what happens in these complex systems is that you have more optionality. And more optionality leads to more businesses. So the question is that with AI, the ability to learn faster, the ability to be more productive with less people, will it bifurcate, create new businesses in an explosive way? Another way of looking at probably a bifurcation diagram is the singularity for the cosmos. All right, you had the singularity of the cosmos and then the Big Bang. And the Big Bang was so powerful and so energetic that it was just plasma. In the early seconds or milliseconds, microseconds of the universe. And eventually, as there was this expansion, the plasma, this energy started to coalesce and you started to have subatomic particles. And eventually, over time, things cooled a little bit more, and then you had matter. And then eventually more cooling, right? And then you had, let's say, hydrogen atom. But it started with the plasma. And so there was a high energy state, and as it was cooling down, it led for optionality for subatomic particles, quarks. And that was a bifurcation that's taking place because there's more things in the universe. There's all these subatomic particles. Before that, it was just plasma. Before that was the singularity. See? So now you look at the universe today, and it's this gigantic bifurcation diagram of all these things that are in the universe. Something similar might happen with AI. If AI does have creative destruction and society doesn't devolve, there's a high probability that AI will build new businesses, and you'll probably have more businesses, but don't have as many people that are needed. So now if you go to organizational theory can be, I'm broad brushing this, in two categories. You have an organization that is coarse or fine-grained. So coarse-grained or fine-grained. Coarse-grained is that it doesn't move fast, it's bloated, it's large. Fine-grained, specialized, can move quick, it's nimble, small. Organizations, after this bottleneck, we may find that fine-grained organizations will benefit more from AI than coarse-grained. In other words, large organizations will benefit less, small organizations will benefit more. Now, if I was to throw probabilities on this, I would give it probably a slight advantage that we go into creative destruction than dystopia. And that probability would be about 65% to go into creative destruction, 35% dystopia chance. And the reason for the dystopia is that there is a feedback loop through our political process where you may be seeing more parts of the society that are pushing for socialism. And that will degrade the society, and we may go down a road where we become less productive, less knowledgeable, people don't get educated, more dependent on the city, more dependent on the government. And then eventually what happens is we slowly decline into a dark age. Now, if you use that as an example, the 35% dystopic, if you see the fall of if you see the fall of Rome, right, by the slow decline of the Roman Empire broke up into two. Actually, it broke up into four, but you have the Western and the Eastern Empire. The Eastern Roman Empire lasted longer than the Western. Now, if you really think about it, did Rome really fall? Well, in a technical sense, it was sacked, but the culture of Rome never really fell. What happened was it became less productive. And there's a nuance on what I'm saying here. It became less productive. People didn't know how to fix things. The engineering capability started to go down. The ability to protect the empire started to go down. The fabric of society started to deteriorate. And the Roman Empire did fall, but there's an echo of it. And because there was lack of innovation, lack of knowledge, lack of being able to protect the country or the empire, it started to degrade, and it went into a dark age. And throughout that dark age, then you have the Renaissance and the Enlightenment. And through that Renaissance and the Enlightenment, it was the rebirth of Rome. So Rome kind of like was destroyed, but it never really went away. And it's a 35% chance that we may see that AI ends up being that inflection point that leads to the fall of the American Empire.
In rare earth and chip companies, here's what it just said.
Government operates best when it's kind of predictable. That is, when you know what are the tariffs going to be for the next 20 years. Because when you build a factory, so the government shouldn't be changing its policy, every year or every day, because predictability is a very, very important thing. Understanding when the company's helping nascent technology, is it doing that for the good of the country and and treating companies equally, or will it want to own part of those companies and if somebody has better technology, they'll favor the company they own part of. We need to understand what those policies are. Yes, I think there's a rush of people to say, wow, maybe that's how to get to the front of the line for government money, but the rules of the game we're playing are pretty unclear right now.
Before you issue inoculations, don't you think you should do proper testing? Bill Gates? Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get turmeric. Turmeric will bring down inflammation and soak up free radicals. This is going to help with your immune system, your cardiovascular system, and even your brain function. By bringing down inflammation at the cerebral level, you're protecting your neurons. Ashwagandha root helps to control your cortisol levels and your blood glucose levels and reduces inflammation. Again, important for your immune system, cardiovascular system, and brain function. Lignans helps with your immune system and your endocrine system. It will soak up free radicals and bring down inflammation. Now, if you stack these together, You can take them separately. They're very high quality supplements just to take them separately. But you stack these together, you get a synergistic stack that will slow down the aging process and rev up your metabolism. And you're reducing plaque formation and helping your brain by controlling inflammation. Because if you have chronic inflammation at the cerebral level, you'll have neural death. So what's important here is just to stack this, slow down the aging process. You stack this also during the fall and the winter season, and you're revving up your immune system. Super important. All right, let's find out what's going on over at Bloomberg. Let's listen.
Capital today trying to get perhaps lawmakers on board with this broader vision when it comes to more market access for NVIDIA's products. So working very closely here with the administration on that. So I'm going to see if there's any sort of development on that front. As you mentioned, President Trump saying that he's looking forward to seeing the NVIDIA CEO here in Asia.
Kendall traveling with the president in Japan, making her way to South Korea soon as well, as we continue to follow his movements here on Balance of Power. And a headline crossing the terminal elsewhere in the world: Benjamin Netanyahu, the Prime Minister of Israel, ordering the IDF to carry out powerful strikes on Gaza. More to come here on Bloomberg.
Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the heirloom barley. Heirloom barley will detoxify your body, bring down inflammation, and soak up free radicals through superoxide dismutase. By detoxifying your body every day and bringing down inflammation, you're revving up your immune system, your endocrine system, helping with your brain function, helping with your cardiovascular function. You're slowing down the aging process. This is a month supply. Take it every day, detoxify your body, and bring down inflammation. And get the Boomer Boost. Boomer Boost has 68 nutrients. It has a very comprehensive compound profile shown on the screen. You can read the label on my website. Take this every day. This will focus on a multitude of different systems. Help with brain function, help with musculature, rev up your metabolism and increase your energy levels, help with your cardiovascular health. It'll help to control A1C levels. And what you're going to notice is that within 72 hours, you have more energy, you're going to have more vitality, and you're going to be more active. You take this long term, and what you're going to start noticing is that you actually look younger. Your body is healing, and you are slowing down the aging process. Super important. This is magical stuff. All right. Now, if you're an athlete, take this for your pre or post workout fuel source, and you'll get added benefits from your workout. But you can take this even if you're not an athlete. This is very important. This is part of that overall protocol to slow down the aging process. You can take this separately and you'll get benefits from it, a lot of benefits from it. But if you follow my protocol, you're supercharging it and you're speeding up the anti-aging effects. And what's that protocol? The multivitamin, the probiotic, Max 3 Fiber Cleanse, C60, the turmeric, ashwagandha, and lignans, and the Boomer Boost. You do all that together, and boom, that's the magic sauce to slow down the aging process. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and don't be a Bill Gates. Let's see what is going on here. All right, let's listen into France 24.
Voting is underway in New York before Election Day next week, with the city on the cusp of getting a Democratic Socialist as mayor. Zoran Mamdani receiving big ticket support from Senator Bernie Sanders and Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez as his campaign enters its final stretch. The 34-year-old Muslim, who is the son of Indian immigrants, pitched his candidacy as a force to take on billionaires and oligarchs who have poured money supporting his opponents. Take a listen to Mamdani summing up his campaign.
We are going to freeze the rent for more than 2 million rent-stabilized tenants. and use every resource at our disposal to build housing for everyone who needs it. We are going to eliminate the fare on every single bus line and make what are currently the slowest buses in the nation move around the city with ease. And we are going to create universal childcare at no cost to parents.
We can now bring in Ian Reifowitz, SUNY Distinguished Professor of History at SUNY Empire State University. Thank you so much for joining us on the program today. Mamdani's message has remained the same: free buses, freezing the rent, universal childcare. Has his ability to come this far, is it because he's made this entire campaign about affordability?
Affordability is first and foremost on Americans' minds and on New Yorkers' minds. And there's no question that Mamdani has done a good job. He's a very charismatic candidate, but he also has some substance to him. The issues that you mentioned around affordability are, they are resonating with New Yorkers. Now, other candidates could have talked about that. So obviously, it's not just the message; it's also the messenger. But he hit on the right issues. He has discussed other things over the course of his career, in particular about foreign policy and Israel. But he has smartly emphasized in this campaign the affordability issues rather than those other more extraneous issues, at least things that are less on the minds of New York City voters.
What do you make of the lukewarm endorsement he's received from mainstream Democrats?
That's about national strategy, and there's a lot about this mayor's race that's about national U.S. politics. If you are a New York City Democrat, if you've got a national stage, and you are more moderate, somebody like Hakeem Jeffries, who's the minority leader in the House, he was from Brooklyn, New York. He's got to be very wary of being seen as being too far to the left. So that's why his endorsement, which came very late, was Kamala Harris endorsed Mamdani, but did so without mentioning his name. Then you've got other more left Democrats, like the people that the report mentioned, AOC, Bernie Sanders. These are Mamdani's natural allies. They are on the left of the Democratic Party. But for most Democrats, Mamdani is too far to the left to play well outside of very liberal areas like New York.
Because it seems he didn't even need the mainstream Republicans to have his back, considering he had the likes of Elizabeth Warren, AOC, and Sanders.
Well, it's a question of whether those mainstream Democrats in New York specifically would come out either against him or give permission by not endorsing him for moderate Democrats to go ahead and vote for Andrew Cuomo. I think that was really the key. If somebody like Governor Hochul, who was Cuomo's lieutenant governor and advanced and ascended to the governor's seat when Cuomo resigned a few years ago, if she, for example, had stayed out of the race and not endorsed Mamdani, I think that would have been a boost to Cuomo. In Cuomo, you have somebody who can really only win if many middle-of-the-road Democrats were to stay with him and not go with the Democratic nominee, with Mamdani. He has he had the support of a majority of Democratic primary voters. So Cuomo is trying to spread a very thin line.
It's not just who will vote for who; it's who will show up to vote. Because I personally think that there are more middle-of-the-road New Yorkers that would vote for Cuomo than Mamdani, but they may not show up.
In between left-wing Democrats and then the Republicans, like Curtis Sliwa, who are staying in the race. With Sliwa in the race, it's almost impossible for Cuomo to win. But he would have needed somebody like Hochul to give permission for middle-of-the-road Democrats to vote for him rather than Mamdani.
Now, in the past, an immigrant or a person of an immigrant background running for public office, I'm thinking of the likes of Bobby Jindal with the Republican Party, who went ahead and anglicized his name. Zoran Mamdani hasn't needed to do all of that. He's a proud Muslim. He speaks about this. He puts out ads on social media in Hindi, even in Bengali. He eats biryani with his hands. But then again, he can walk across the entire island of Manhattan and speak to ordinary New Yorkers. Have times changed, or can he only do this because it's New York and New York is so diverse?
Well, there are a couple of ways of looking at it, right? New York is different from certainly Louisiana. We also, all right, on the other hand, we do have the example of Barack Obama himself is not, not an immigrant, but had a name that is not anglicized. Not only did he, win election to the U.S. Senate, he became, of course, president of the United States. So I think things have changed. They probably have changed, in that direction, maybe 20, 30 years ago. Certainly Mamdani can follow in the footsteps of Barack Obama in having not changed his name. But Mamdani has done, I think, has more room to emphasize his, let's say, non-U.S. roots or non-Christian roots, which is, even beyond where Obama was, certainly because of the liberal nature of New York City, which is a city of immigrants.
Donald Trump will no doubt be watching what happens come next week. Do you think he'll go out of his way to make Mamdani's life hell?
Yes.
Yeah, probably. Having said that, would he treat New York City that much differently under Andrew Cuomo's mayoralty if that were to come to be, which I don't think is going to happen? I don't think it would be that much of a difference. I think he sees more Mamdani as a useful foil for campaign rhetoric. I think he's going to do what he wants to do to New York City, no matter who's the mayor.
What do you make of what Mamdani's message is, essentially? Because you do have billionaires who have actively are still funding his opponents, doing everything they can to keep him from office. Essentially, they are making his argument for him.
Right. Well, that's the issue, right? It's good to have the right enemies. If there is a sentiment that billionaires have too much power, and the billionaires are the ones arguing against you, well, then, it's pretty self-evident who the candidate is of the rest of the people. Mamdani is very clearly coming from the perspective, going back 10, 15 years to that of the 99% versus the 1%, Bernie Sanders. The real question is, what kind of economic policies can he push through on things like taxes, where he has to go through the New York state government to change city taxes in New York? Not going to be easy.
I want to ask about the Democratic Party and what this race tells us about the Democratic Party as a whole, because I understand what you said about Hakeem Jeffries not wanting to seem too progressive or too far to the left, but that at the end of the day, throughout this whole election campaign, he said he's having discussions with Mamdani. He gave this very, very last-minute endorsement, but at the end of the day, what did the Democrats want? Do they want to dither around and not continue to be in disarray or stand for something?
Right. Well, it's a question of what they stand for. Zohran Mamdani is not going to be the leader of the Democratic Party in the United States of America. He is one person who could be very useful to people like Trump to say, this is what Democrats are. We've been saying all along. They're socialists. On the other hand, there's a question of what their message is, right? So they have to have a countering message, and it's going to be hard for them to have one nationally, at least until we get closer to the midterm elections, and you can have a nationalized election, even if it's in various congressional districts or states. The Democrats have had people like AOC and Bernie Sanders on the left, and they've had people, as well as Elizabeth Warren, and they've had people over the last few years like Hillary Clinton, Bernie Sanders, and Kamala Harris, who are more centrist Democrats or center-left Democrats. There is a struggle for what Democrats are going to be nationally. They're not going to be Zohran Mamdani's party. The question is, how much of Zohran Mamdani's image being front and center really hurts Democrats? Republicans think that they can use him as a weapon.
New York is the bellwether. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the collagen. This is dual purpose. It's going to help with your skin, your nails and your hair, your musculature, your bone density, your joint health, and also your cartilage. Super important to take every day. This is a month supply. You mix it with soft foods like hummus or yogurt or even applesauce. You can have it in a smoothie. You can mix it in just filtered water or milk. But take it every day and do some resistance training. This is going to have a dual purpose. It's going to help all these different systems that I just mentioned. Please go to my store and get this very high quality collagen. And if you stack it with vitamin C and drink filtered water, about 32 to 64 ounces, 32 to about 64 ounces of water each day throughout the day. and take the collagen, that will cross-link and improve your dermal layer. When you stack this also with the vitamin C, the C60, and the resveratrol, you're helping your basal layer to improve your skin. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the collagen. And then stack, like how I just mentioned, with the C60, resveratrol, and the vitamin C with the magnesium, and you're improving your dermal layer and your basal layer. All right, that's the end of the show. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Use discount 5 and you get $5 off any order. And if you want to help support the work by donating, you can donate on my website. You can donate through Stripe, PayPal, or buy me a coffee. Thank you for listening and have a nice day.